To order. The next regular Board of Education meeting is on Tuesday, March 26th at 7:30 PM in the board meeting room. I'll start with a few quick remarks. Beginning with what we've been doing for the past two nights. We've been at the Board of Selectmen, RTM Education and F&B, and at the Board of Finance, requesting an appropriation of $850,000 to purchase 9 new special education transportation vehicles, which would enable the district to fully run its own special education transportation. This is an initiative that began in 2016 with 4 Suburbans. We currently operate 6, and we're looking to start the 24-25 school year with 8 Suburbans, 2 wheelchair vans, and 5 Type 2 buses. The vehicles serve all of our students who are eligible for and elect special education transportation, ELP through high school and into transition, which we'll be talking about this evening. As you all know, separate from the appropriation, we also built some internal operational capacity into the budget, including 9 drivers and bus monitors and 1 transportation assistant. We went off cycle and requested an appropriation because we'd like to issue a purchase order in mid-April. So far, to date, the appropriation has been approved unanimously by the Board of Selectmen 5-0 on Monday, and was also approved by the RTM Education and Finance and Budget Committees. The Board of Finance elected to table the approval for the time being. We are hoping that they will approve it by April 9th at the latest at their budget vote. And the members of the RTM are currently looking to see whether or not they can possibly approve it at their meeting on Monday, the 18th, or whether they need to wait until after the Board of Finance approve it first. We are hoping that the RTM appropriation can move forward as planned for Monday night, and that the Board of Finance approval can follow.
Joe, can you pull your mic closer? Sorry.
I can, thank you. In a multi-year period of increasing costs, this makes a meaningful difference to our ability to serve students in other ways. $500,000 is the equivalent of 4.5 teachers, approximately the amount of the gifted program district-wide, and equates to about 6 paraprofessionals. It's a little more than elementary world language and is about the cost of the security initiative that we've just implemented. If we are able to move forward with this program, while there is an initial cost outlay, this should save us about $500,000 a year going forward. Okay, with that, CABE and CAPS are currently taking submissions for program ideas for their November conference next year. So if anybody has something they'd like to see CABE and CAPS prepare a presentation on, you can either email it to me and I'll submit it, or we can, or you can do it. I'm not sure, honestly, if I got it as a CABE. I don't know if everybody got it or just, okay. So send it to me then and I can send it in to CABE. This is Board Member Appreciation Month. I recently learned that there are 1,400 members of local and regional boards of education in Connecticut, which makes us the largest group of elected officials in the state. I think that's a pretty cool thing. Many thanks to the young children who produced cards like this one. And we have a little packet from ELP. It makes a difference. Thank you all for taking a few moments to say something to us. With that, I think Alan has a little something prepared as well.
So for your pleasure this evening, for the Board of Education, we have a quartet who has kindly volunteered their time this evening, and given it's a volunteerism organization, that's very appropriate. I had the opportunity to watch this group on the Leap concert, which figured some Celtic music. And since St. Patrick's Day is around the corner and we have CABE Appreciation Month, they were kind enough to say that they would come over. When I asked them, would you mind coming over? They quickly said, yes, absolutely. So with that, I'm going to let them do a wee bit of introduction. This is the quartet. We were familiar with SLAM, right? SLAM, the building company. Well, this is SLAM, the quartet, and they go after their first names of Sydney, Lisa, Apara, and May. So with that, I'm going to introduce SLAM just to give you a little bit of pleasure this evening with a wee bit of Irish music. Welcome, everybody. For sure. Please.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Agnesa. We're the Slam Quartet, so I'm Sydney. This is Lisa, Opara, and May. And tonight we'll be performing an Irish lullaby called To Rugby Rugby Club.
Thank you very, very much.
That was lovely.
Lovely indeed.
So that is, of course, why we do what we do. That is one of many wonderful things that our students do, and it's wonderful to have that reminder. So before I close out this part of the meeting, I'll just say thank you to Robin Nelson, Sarah Parent, Greg Grambling. Ooh.
You can, Greg, Julie Best, Katie Loveland, Dennis Maroney, and John Cini. And Dave Brown, sorry, Dave.
Thank you. Let's move on to the public comment. Please approach the podium. Thank you.
If anyone in person would like to participate in public comment, please come up to the podium. Wait for the chair to recognize you. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please note the time with the chair.
When you're ready.
That's it? Okay. My name is Elena Bueno. My address is 123 Hoyt Street. I am here because I am pretty horrified by the fact that we are cutting the budget of the school. I mean, in the last 4 years, so in 2021, the value of the budget increased by 2.3%. Inflation was 7%. So we cut the budget 4.6%. In 2022, value of the budget was increased by 4%, and inflation was 6.5%. So we cut the budget by 2.5%. In the last 2 years, we have barely covered inflation. Now, if we consider the fact that Connecticut is the state with the 10th highest inflation in the country, the only state up north that has inflation comparable to Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi, we could be talking about a 14% cut in the budget of the education budget. Now, This year, we are already having high inflation again. The last 6 months of the year and the first 6 months of 2025, we could have another 7-year inflation year, easy. I mean, and this is like, I'm being conservative. By the end of this budget we're talking about, we may be short 20%. If we don't adjust the budget to inflation, I understand that you guys are not familiar with inflationary environment, but if you don't add the line in the budget, as it is done in inflationary places, you don't add the line that says adjustment to inflation, well, you have a hole. That's why you're cutting, the world language in a town already with no diversity, you're cutting world language. Doesn't show a lot of intention to have the kids compete worldwide, but whatever. I don't have a clue. I don't know if it is that nobody understands economics. I don't really know what the problem is, but it clearly we would have to adjust the budget to get back to 2020 levels. And this is the year to do that because we are going to have a reevaluation of the taxes. So we're going to have more money. So people are already talking about cutting taxes. Cutting taxes in town while we cut the school budget. That's it. That's my comment. I don't know if nobody understands here inflation. Does anybody? It sounds familiar.
Are you done? Thank you for your time.
Anybody else in person? If anybody online would like to participate, please use the raised hand icon. There are no raised hands at this time.
Thank you, Cass. Okay. With that, I will move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks. Welcome to members of the community and our staff this evening, and to those people who are participating online. I too would like to recognize our board members for their service. One of the characteristics and attributes of our town is clearly volunteerism and service. And I've always believed that we can tell our young people what to do, but as opposed to what we tell them what to do, if we show them what to do, I'm a firm believer that they rise to the occasion. So thank you for stepping to the plate. This is not an easy task by any means. So I appreciate your advocacy for all our students here in Darien. You have received this evening cards from each of the grade levels, from pre-K through 5th grade. So each of you have one from, again, our ELP kids and our 5th graders, and they represent all the elementary schools in our school system. So I speak on their behalf when I say thank you for everything that you do for them. We have a little video here, 2 videos, one very quick, one from someone who you will recognize, which is the Secretary of Education. He visited our school system some years ago, and he has a little message for board members.
I'm happy to join you today, albeit virtually. Just like school, we know there's no substitute for being with you in person. And while I can't be in Connecticut today, I'm so thankful to have a moment with you now to celebrate Board of Education Appreciation Month. And personally, thank you and acknowledge how hard you're all working for the children of Connecticut. I want to thank Patrice, Lisa, and the whole team at CABE for the great work you do. CABE has really stepped up these last several years, and I've been fortunate to be able to work more closely with CABE. Thank you, CABE. Thank you all boards of education. What a time to be leading. You've done a great job. We say that board members are volunteers, but that could be farther from the reality. Over the past few years, you've taken on heavy fire. You've faced threats, bullying, protests. You stay in the arena. You wear many hats and roll up your sleeves to get to work for our schools and for our students. From elevating critical issues like learning recovery and mental health support, to ensuring that parents and communities get to have more of a say in their child's learning. Your efforts in and for your communities make all the difference.
So we will balance that with a wee message from the 1st grade class over Mrs. Gregory's classroom over at Oxford when I went to read to the class. They wanted to share their thoughts and appreciation to the Board of Education.
I love my school and I'm grateful for what you do for us. Like give the schools the stuff and gave the money for us to build the new school. They pay for stuff to help us learn, like reading and writing, with math too. And I think they help get really good teachers. The best thing that they do for us is make sure that the school is safe and that we practice doing stuff and help the community. They're really good people that help the public schools a lot. They helped Dr. Adley hire. So I think they're really good at doing their job. Thank you so much for all that you do. We love our school and we're so grateful for you.
So for those of us who are here and representing members of the community and the teaching staff and the kids around the district, let's give a round of applause for our Board of Education and our students. And thank you to all the teachers and staff and students who participated.
Thank you indeed.
Thank you. So the interview process for Ox Ridge and the Hindley principals is underway. Screening interviews have been completed and parents and staff will be involved in the interview process for the last week in March. I'm pleased to share this evening the transition plan for Hindley, and that will be shared. Will go out at about 8:30 this evening to the members of the community. As you know, Ms. Snowden will be going to Region 12 and we wish her well and thank her for her leadership. But as we move forward, I'm pleased to announce that effective for April 1st through the spring recess until the through the end of the school year, Jan D'Amico will serve as the Hindley interim principal for the remainder of the school year. Mrs. D'Amico is here this evening. She's sitting over there. She has served as an assistant principal since 2020. And Jan was an elementary teacher and a PLC coordinator with the Bethel Schools for 7 years prior to this. So we thank Jennifer and we look forward to her leadership throughout the rest of the school year. Additionally, Ms. Nicole Pentro, who is currently serving as our district elementary curriculum coordinator, as many of you know, will join the Hindley leadership team to provide additional support from April 1st through the 12th. So that's up until the April recess. Nicole was an elementary principal in Fairfield for 10 years, and she also worked in Hindley as a literacy interventionist. So I know she will be welcomed at the school. Immediately after the spring break, starting April 22nd through the remainder of the school year, Christina Brass-Taylor, I think many of you probably know Christina, will serve as the Hindley interim assistant principal for the remainder of the school year. Christina is a highly experienced and respected special education administrator. Most recently, she served as the high school special education department chair, and she's presently assisting the district by covering maternity leaves both at the middle school and Darien High School. Central Services will continue to work with Jen and the staff throughout the remainder of the year, and our priority is clearly to have a smooth transition to the end of the school year with the quality of instruction, but I'll have a smooth transition for parents, students, and staff members. So this communication, again, will go out in about another 30 minutes, and that will take us through the remainder of the school year at Hindley, and we appreciate those people who are stepping up to those positions and those interim positions. Just a reminder that we are looking for a full-time principal, and again, we'll be interviewing those candidates in March, and that will be to commence July 1st. Elementary conferences, parent conferences have kicked off, and I know they are very popular. We will have a wee bit of Irish music around the district on Friday. Won't disturb people, but just in celebration of St. Patrick's Day. Oh, we did have a number of schools who participated recently before the holidays in donations, and some of them were Super Bowl for Karen. And one of the schools, I know the middle school and Homes participated. We have a wee stat from Homes that they collected over 1,000 food items for the kids' care event, and that was donated to persons. The board chair and I did submit yesterday testimony on the science of reading and some thoughts on Senate Bill 14. And I shared that just a wee bit before the board meeting this evening. I want to congratulate our gifted students who competed in the second Wordmaster Challenge for grades 3 through 8, and we placed second through 6th, but everybody had a good time. The Quiz Bowl had 3 teams who competed in Philadelphia, and they placed 1st, 3rd, and 4th in that significantly large regional competition. I'll leave the theatre through it. I think our students have some announcements there. I want to recognize the basketball team. The Unified Basketball Team has a wee game this Thursday at 3 p.m. It's at the local venue for the most part. It's in Stamford. If anybody would like to participate in that, I'll be going along to that and cheering the kids along. Simsbury High School will be coming with their Gertrude Banks Intergenerational Gospel Choir on March 21st at the high school. We thank Darien Music for Youth for sponsoring this event. And also the Darien Advocates for Education of the Gifted. I shared in the communication on Friday that on March 20th at 7 p.m. in the library, there's a workshop for parents on AI. And you have to sign up for that, so space is somewhat limited. Holly Clark is an international author, bestseller, and leader in educational technology, and particularly AI. Holly will be coming and working with our staff. So we'll be pleased to share as we move through the remainder of the school year some of the work we're doing in that particular area. Just a couple of announcements about some meetings coming up. The communications meeting has been moved from March 20th to March 27th. So that's the communications committee. The finance committee is scheduled to meet March 21st. Our next board meeting, as the chair says, the 26th. And just a wee look ahead, the Board of Education meeting was originally scheduled for April 9th. That is the night of the Board of Finance vote. So we will immediately be notifying the cancellation of that meeting and schedule a special meeting for April 10th. That is what was approved on the master agenda that most recently was approved, that we've moved it from that. So we'll put in motion those notifications tomorrow morning and also update the website with the relevant information. So again, that's April 9th. If you have April 9th down as a board meeting, that's the Board of Education, that's the Board of Finance meeting on the budget, the vote on the budget. So we rescheduled that according to our schedule for April 10th. And that concludes my announcements.
Thank you very much, Alan. Yes, Julie.
May I just make one clarification, Dr. Allen's announcement that tomorrow, Thursday, we'll be having Unified Sports here. We'll be hosting
here?
Stanford, yes.
Oh, okay.
So just enthusiastically, everyone is invited to the big gym at Darien High School tomorrow for our home game for Unified Sports.
I originally thought it was that, but I was surprised to read that. Good. That's a be more home venue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Student representative reports.
Good evening, everyone. The March SAT was just completed over this weekend, but our juniors will be taking another March SAT next Wednesday, and we wish everyone the best of luck. If you're one of the lucky few who are traveling on the band trip to Nashville next Wednesday, then you'll conveniently be making that up on April 5th. Also, some exciting news, Hello Dolly opens tomorrow night, and we really hope to see as many community members as we can come on out and show support to the awesome cast and crew who have been working tirelessly and putting together such a fantastic show. Performances are at 7 p.m. tomorrow night and Friday night and Saturday night, as well as a 2 p.m. matinee on Saturday. And you can get your tickets at theater308.org or at the door.
Thank you.
Good evening. So seniors had their 100 Days dinner last Thursday, which was celebrating our final 100 days before graduation. And seniors are also finalizing their internship plans this week because plans are due early next week. So we'll all know where we're going. And lastly, student government is planning a school bonfire for the 22nd of March, which will be held at school from like 6 to 8 p.m. And the event is free to attend, so hopefully all DHS students are welcome, and there'll be food trucks and live music. And also thank you so much to all the board members for all that you do. And I think I can speak for most students when I say that we really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's very kind.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
I just want to mention that the board, you do have a book there, Trust and Inspire. That is a book study that our cabinet engaged in, and all the administrators throughout the district have participated in for the year. Leon Krolikowski, our Director of Security, was so inspired that he contacted the author and had him personalize the books for you for this evening. So that was Leon's little gift to you. So I hope you enjoy the read, and maybe we have a wee chance to discuss some of it maybe during this board retreat or otherwise.
Thank you. And thank you to Leon.
Yeah.
Wow. With that, I'll move to the ever exciting approval of the minutes. Thank you, Sarah. May I have a motion to approve the following minutes of the regular meeting held on February 15th, 2024, minutes of the regular meeting held on February 27th, 2024. That's Sarah, seconded by Robin. All those in favor? That is unanimous. And those minutes from the 15th are a big lift. So
I just want to say thank you to those of you that kept me honest and pointed out typos, and that was helpful. It's an 18-page minute. There's bound to be a mistake. So thank you.
Okay, board committee reports. Anybody, Julie?
Thank you. The policy committee met last Friday, and we have a number of policies that we'll get to later this evening.
Yes. Sarah?
So you may have noticed the curriculum committee had to cancel last week, and we are working to reschedule. We're having some scheduling challenges, so we will work to find another date shortly.
Okay, great. And I will report that Henley Homes and Royal is now firmly in pre-construction. There will be exploratory work done in the buildings over April break. There will be trailers on the property in May, but they're going to be away from any students and staff. They'll be all towards back to the property, so they won't impede the school day in any way. And parent meetings are currently, we're working on scheduling parent and staff meetings for updates. Additionally, all of the staging meetings for the complexity of the project during the school year are already up and running now, which is probably an appropriate time to say many, many thanks to Carrie Snowden for all her work in carrying us this far through the project, and to thank Jen D'Amico for agreeing to take us the next little bit. We appreciate it. Thank you. Any other committee reports? No. Okay. Presentations and discussions. Start with discussion and possible acceptance of contemplated gifts for the athletic department. Mr. Manfredonia. Hi, Chris. We can't hear you.
You're on mute. Unmute yourself, please.
No.
No, not yet. Jeff, do we know why?
Was that the sheriff?
We can't hear him.
Oh, you can't hear Fred? You unmuted on your.
He has to unmute himself.
He has to unmute himself.
Yes.
I.
He's saying he can't. He doesn't look unmuted here. Oh, I see. There is a little mute on the camera. You can't do it, Chris? Okay.
That'll be on his end. Not for me here. Unless I drive to him.
We're trying to figure it out, Chris.
Now it looks frozen.
Okay.
I can try to speak this if you want, just from.
Can you make him close?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go.
Yes,
I'm so
thank you,
sorry.
Chris. That's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm at the bowels of TD Bank Arena and Quinnipiac. I apologize.
All right. All right. Thank you for being here. Fire away.
Okay, so you have a couple of contemplated gifts to be considered tonight. The first is from the Blue Wave Booster Club. Blue Wave Booster Club provides opportunities for our athletic teams. Now you have a gift for the big team for a pitching machine, as well as a bike between the pitcher, catcher, and coach. Again, these are both items that would not be supported by the organization that were gracious enough to have Booster Club, the baseball team.
Chris, you're cutting in and out a little bit, so I'm just going to read the description for the benefit of the public. It's for a pitching machine and coach-pitcher communication for the Darien baseball team from the Blue Wave Booster Club.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. You want to keep going, please?
Yep, and then we also annual Darien Youth Lacrosse boys and the amount of $5 will go to support the huddle teams for the season.
That was Coach Bus's film review and the huddle subscriptions.
Right,
Okay.
an annual lacrosse program.
Okay, annual. And this is for there's one for the boys and one for the girls. Is that correct, Chris?
Correct. The amount of $5,000 each.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. And for 5,000 each, yes.
Correct.
Thank you. May I have a motion to accept the contemplated gifts for the athletic department? Oh, question, yes.
Thanks, Chris. I just had a question on the lacrosse ones. It's just any idea on what the breakdown is on those expenses? I see one of the one of the items being supported is senior night expenses, and it's probably not $4,900 on senior night expenses and $100 spread over the other few things, but could you just tell us a little more on how this gets divvied up?
Yeah, I would say that is going to go towards the huddle, both the huddle expense as well as the filming costs that both teams will use to have organization come out and film their games.
If I'm sorry, do you mind if I follow? It says help defray the costs of the huddle film analysis. Does that mean that this is taking something off of our plate? Is this something that is in our budget that they're helping to cover?
It is not in our budget, no. Huddle is a fundraise endeavor for all the athletic teams at the high school that use it.
Okay, so who covers the rest of that? If this is helping to defray the cost, where does the rest of that funding come from?
The team have to fundraise to offset the rest.
Okay, thanks so much.
Well, Dennis.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. I see that the gifts for the lacrosse is from the Darien Youth Lacrosse Association. And my question is, how many other sports have youth groups supporting them at high school level?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of one that has made a donation in recent time. So I think Youth Lacrosse would be the only one that I can think of.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Katie.
Actually, Chris, I believe that the Darien Junior Field Hockey did this fall as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my question is about that process. As a parent of a Darien Junior Field Hockey player, I was not aware that a donation was being made or that fundraising had happened. So I'm curious about what the relationship is between some of the youth sports and how those funds are kind of allocated and donated, and what the communication is back to the actual players who are paying fees for that.
Yeah, so my understanding is when Youth Lacrosse opens its registration, they have a button that a family can choose to donate or not that will go towards the high school program. So it's very
So it's separate than you're saying from the program fees in this case.
correct. In this case, it is, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then in the packet, it looks like there's a duplicate. I just wanted to confirm that it's one donation.
It's boys and girls.
So they are, it's for the same thing. It's okay. Thank you. And those operate in the same fashion then, Chris, like that sort of box for a donation amount, like that exists for both the boys team and the girls separately, or it's one organization?
So Youth Lacrosse gives $5,000 to the boys lacrosse program at Darien High School, and also gives $5,000 if approved to the girls program at Darien High School.
Robin, next question.
Robin.
I just have one question about it says the coach buses to out-of-state games would also be partially defrayed for the boys and girls lacrosse. And my question again, kind of on the same vein, is, isn't that covered in our budget? And would this reduce the budgeted amount that I thought was in there for this?
So if remember, the Board of Ed, the school covers a price of what a school bus costs for any away trip. If a team would like to upgrade a coach bus, which many of our teams do, for a longer trip, then they are responsible to pay the difference between what the coach bus costs versus what the school bus costs.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right. With our thanks, may I have a motion to accept the contemplated gifts for the athletic department? Dennis, seconded by Robin. All those in favor? That is unanimous.
I can't see Greg. Greg, if you are, is he on or is he not on?
Yes, I'm on.
You're on,
I'm just
okay.
I'm just in an airport, so I'm.
Okay.
All right, Greg, did you vote
Raise
yes?
hand.
Okay,
Wonderful.
thank you.
Thank
Just-
you.
If you oppose something, just let me know.
Yep, I can chat.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Christopher.
Okay, the next item, update on the transition committee, Shirley Klein and Scott McCarthy.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Adley, colleagues, students, and families. Last spring, the board approved the goal to convene a transition planning steering committee that would review the transition needs of our students, assess current opportunities for transition programs, evaluate, consider, and develop a transition program curriculum scope and sequence to address the individual needs of our students and post-secondary opportunities. The steering committee members include district and building administrators, secondary school psychologist, secondary speech and language pathologist, secondary school counselor, and MMS and DHS special education teachers, and a BCABA. The design of the steering committee was really to ensure that the practitioners who work with our students and families, and who are the providers and implementers of their educational programs and related services, are the stakeholders who will develop the continuum of transition programs and proposal to address the individual needs of our students. I'm delighted to introduce some of the steering committee members this evening on our panel. Taylor Bonanno is one of our psychologists at Darien High School. Megan Bergeron. Oh, I didn't go in order. Sorry, let me go back. Christiana Antonucci, a special education teacher at DHS. Megan Bergeron, one of our special education teachers at MMS. Kat Brunswick, didn't go in order again. Sorry, Kat. Allison Mullane, one of our high school administrators and assistant principal at DHS. And Kat Brunswick, one of our special education teachers at Darien High School. Tonight's panel will really go over the review that you've had a chance to look at. I will turn the program over to our moderator and leader of the steering committee this evening, Dr. Scott McCarthy.
Thank you, Shirley. I wish we had a cute video of first graders to make your night. But we'll do our best to do it in a different way. So thank you to the members of the Board of Education for your time this evening and for supporting this work, which we know our community values, and so does our team here. I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the philosophy of specialized programming that we have in Darien. So we believe that programs are not spaces, they require spaces. But programs are more than spaces. So programs require the ability to be flexible to student needs. They require the ability to implement a continuum of services based on student needs. And they require the ability to in the moment, adjust and reflect those student needs throughout their programming. So similarly, what we'll talk about tonight is how a transition program and the transition programs that we have observed and studied are able to do that and what those best practices are. Yeah, this might not work from here.
Over here, point over there.
All right. So I'm just going to begin by telling you a little bit about relevant regulatory updates that have happened in the last 5 years that significantly impact transition steering or transition programming. In 2021, the state regulations were updated to require that all students with IEPs have transition programming that begins starting at age 14. And in 2023, the Connecticut State Department of Education updated their regulations again after significant litigation to require that districts provide programming for students with IEPs until age 22. And so when we think about students who have comprehensive transition programming needs, that typically starts around age 18. And so when we previously went from 18 to 21, we're now required to go to 8 to 22. And that significantly changes the cohort of students and the numbers of students who are programming for during that space. Thanks. So transition services are activities that are designed to improve the academic and functional achievement of our students who have transition needs. They include specialized instruction, they include related services, and these are goal-oriented services that help students achieve their goals towards post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, supported employment, continuing adult education, a variety of skills. So these are truly individualized based on the student's self-determination. So our committee that has been working diligently this year, and our goal was to first look at the cohort needs of the students that we have. So an internal cohort assessment of our students, grades 6 through 12, who have significant comprehensive transition needs. We also wanted to look at local programs and do site visits of our local programs to identify what are the best practices in transition programming that exist in this area. We also wanted to review our curriculum, make sure that it aligns with national transition standards, look at our current programs that exist within our high school programming, that exist within our middle school program, and then next into our elementary school program to make sure that that is truly vertically aligned to support our students going through our transition programming. Obviously, the end goal is to develop and implement a program. That's objective 4. So the first 3 objectives were the work of our committee this school year, and we have representatives from each of those objectives subcommittees who will be presenting to you tonight on the detailed work that they have done. Before I turn it over to our committee presenters, I just wanted to highlight the extraordinary efforts of the larger committee that worked on this project throughout this school year on their own time, who have been dedicated to supporting the needs of our students, who are their students, who they know, and are helping to design a program that can meet their needs. So these were the committee memberships. So I will now turn it over to Taylor Bonanno, one of our school psychologists at Darien High School, to talk about the work of the cohort needs assessment that we conducted internally as a subcommittee.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. So the first objective was to evaluate the current and future individual needs of our enrolled students in grades 6 through 12. And these are students with comprehensive services, and we utilize their current IEPs, evaluations, and information from team members. So we conducted an internal needs assessment based on those students that are currently enrolled in Darien Public Schools and reviewed the IEPs that included those comprehensive services. And then after making this list of students across the middle and high school levels, we projected the enrollment for the transition program over the next 5 years. The factors that we considered for eligibility were based on family input and their current PPT recommendations. We reviewed IEP goals and objectives, as well as their current programming. So for example, students with comprehensive services, we looked at students who receive paraeducator support, students who receive modified academic content, students who may need functional living skills taught to them, students who could be or may be nonverbal, students who may be medically fragile or have physical impairments. Yeah. So you can see in this graph, we projected the cohort that we put together over the next 5 years. So starting for next school year, you'll see that there are 5 students that would possibly be enrolled in this program. And as you go through the years, you see that the numbers increase. And the third bar shows that there's over 15 students that could be eligible for transition services. After that, you see that the numbers slightly dip, but the following years, we are not anticipating that they decrease significantly Instead, we anticipate that they plateau. While looking at our K-5 population, there are several students that have comprehensive needs that would be in the future of this program. Also, we have to consider that we don't know the number of students that may move into district. For example, there are 2 current students that are in this graph now that if we projected this cohort last year at this time, we wouldn't have had those students as part of the enrollment. Additionally, we have to consider that students' needs change throughout their time in high school. So the teams are evaluating those needs. So those could potentially be students that are also included. And we also have to consider students that may leave for a private placement for middle school and then return to Darien High School for their high school years. So now I will pass it over to Christiana Antonucci and Megan Bergeron to talk about the program evaluation and the site visitations.
Thank you. Our objective was to identify essential components of Darien's transition program and what that should include in its plan through members' research of best practices from local and national exemplar programs with input from all stakeholders. The first thing that we did was look at the Connecticut State Department of Education's approved list of transition programs. And this list includes both private and public programs. So based on this list, we identified programs that had exemplary reputations and reached out to schedule visits and collect information. Based on the information that we collected, we were able to identify successful programs. On the left, we listed the target sites that we identified to interview and visit. And again, these sites include both public and private programs. On the right, we included areas in which we wanted to gather information. And some of these areas include how much time students spend in internship experiences and how much time students spend receiving specialized instruction. I am going to turn it over to Megan to discuss some of the insights we gathered from the program visits.
Thank you, Christiana. So throughout our site visits and our conversations with a variety of programs, we found that there are 3 main and essential components to supporting students in their success from 18 to 22. Specialized instruction focuses on functional academics, vocational skills, and pre-teaching for college courses. This is also a time that students receive related services in areas such as OT, PT, and speech. One of the most vital components of a transition program is internship and vocational experience, focused on job coaching and working toward competitive employment. Another big takeaway from our experience visiting was the importance of building relationships within the community to enrich students' experiences in their own town and employ skills learned from previous specialized instruction. So each student schedule is uniquely created to meet their individual needs and goals. While we know that there are many options as to what a student's schedule may look like, here's an example of what most typically represents a student's week. Often the day begins at the program's home base, whether that be at the Board of Education, a rented space, or a college campus. An example of how this time is spent could be planning out safe travel routes and pre-teaching skills necessary for success in the internships, jobs, community experiences, and college courses. Here, some students work on functional academics, such as managing their bank accounts. Next, students have a brief period for social and leisure time, which gives them a chance to have a choice in preferred activities, such as an art project, going for a walk with a friend, or listening to music. During this time, students independently use skills such as time management, making appropriate choices, and engaging in meaningful social interactions. Students then transition to their job or internship with a paraprofessional or job coach. They have the opportunity to work with a variety of businesses, such as coffee shops, restaurants, and grocery stores.
Students have responsibilities here, such as preparing food, stocking shelves, or working at the checkout. On the days that students are not at their job or internship, this time is focused on daily living skills, such as doing laundry, folding clothes, health and hygiene, and safe and healthy relationships. Upon returning to their home base, students either cook or prepare food for lunch for the remainder of the week. At least once a week, students go into the community, leaving their home base to go eat at a restaurant. This is another great opportunity for students to practice social, transportation, and money management skills. Lastly, an essential part of all programs is inclusive community participation. Students spend this time in a variety of ways, such as going to the gym, to the mall, the grocery store, or the library. For some students, this may be a time that they are enrolled in auditing or taking college courses for credits. This is also an effective time for related service providers to be able to work with the students within the community setting and practice skills from previous direct instruction. And now Christiana will go into some details about one of our visits.
We were able to visit the launch program in New Canaan, and we had the opportunity to take some photos since students were not at the site at this time. This space includes a full kitchen, a laundry facility, a space to provide specialized instruction and pre-teaching of vocational skills. In the back of the kitchen, there's 2 high top tables, and that can be used for students to practice skills that may be applicable in the restaurant setting. One thing that we really liked about this program was its central location within the community and town. This allowed students to utilize the location to practice transportation skills, like organizing safe walking routes. Next, Allison and Kat will discuss the 3rd objective surrounding curriculum development.
Thank you. So in terms of curriculum development, we first sent out surveys to look at what we currently do in terms of transition practices at the high school and the middle school. And we combined that with the knowledge and the takeaways from the research that was done with site visits and research we did looking at exemplary programs from across the country. And we had a few key takeaways. One is that our Darien students do have some great opportunities for transition activities, whether they're in the Learning Center, the core program, or in Excel. We identified some key aspects of the curriculum that we'd like to see codified and have vertical alignment from middle school all the way up to the 18 to 22 transition program. And so I just want to touch on a little bit of what we mean by those key aspects. So for assessing or accessing academics for college and career readiness, we're not just talking about having students go into the general education classes for inclusion. We're also talking about specific instruction in their special education classes around academics geared toward their specific IEP and learning strategies around academics such as time management, executive functioning skills, note-taking and listening. And we've tried to align all of these aspects with various competencies from the vision of the graduate. We find that that academic one aligns very closely with communication. And when we look at self-determination, we're targeting the competencies of integrity, empathy, and creativity. And we're having students explore, who they are, what they value, and what they want from their lives. And so the lessons around self-determination would include lessons on self-advocacy, college preparation, and problem solving, decision making. When we look at career exploration, one other thing about the self-determination, we really want students to develop a sense of competency and autonomy. And we want to combine that with giving them the skills that they need to have healthy relationships with others. In terms of career exploration, we aligned that with curiosity. So we want students to be aware of the 16 different career clusters and various pathways that are included in those career clusters. And we want students to be able to develop an action plan for themselves geared toward a particular interest of theirs that aligns with a particular career cluster. And some of the important skills that we want to make sure are taught would be involved around like applying for a job, being able to interview well for a job, and to understand what the behavioral workplace expectations are. So Kat, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Sure. Hello. The current curriculum in the Excel program at DHS is aligned with the Connecticut state standards and the students' individual goals and objectives, focusing on increasing the students' independence, communication, and curiosity by providing instructional opportunities for career exploration and vocational trades. These lessons are taught during a learning center class where students participate in pictorial interest inventories or surveys. Students practice completing each section of an online application that references the volunteer work they have participated in and internships. The students in the Excel program have volunteered at Person to Person, Reynolds Farm, and a few of our students have had summer internships at the cafe located in the Darien YMCA. The students also receive instruction on creating and completing a resume that will eventually be a part of a digital portfolio that will reflect their work and time at DHS to help support the post-secondary transition. Students also practice their interview skills by participating in round-robin interviews with their peers, with the lead teacher providing feedback so students begin to generalize and hone their communication skills in conversational exchanges. The life skills curriculum currently focuses on personal hygiene, household chores, organizational skills, scheduling, cooking, leisure activities, community involvement, baking, and digital citizenship for online safety. Creating a post-secondary transition program would provide the students with more community-based opportunities to have hands-on experience and solidify the skills they would need to live and thrive independently as adults within the Darien community that they call home.
Thanks. So the last bullet that's on there about course proposals, we went off on a little bit of a tangent, but we think it's worthwhile. As we looked at the opportunities that our special education or students who receive special education get, we noticed that they have a lot of opportunities to develop these independent living skills. But our students in general education don't necessarily have those same opportunities. So our general education students have classes such as health and personal finance and DIY, but they don't have a lot more than that to develop independent living skills. They're extremely well prepared academically to go off for rigorous college experiences. But due to the fact that the students in general education don't have a lot of those independent living classes, it means that our students who receive special education don't have opportunities to learn transition skills in an inclusive environment. So to that end, we came up with a plan for 2 new courses that we're going to propose to the high school curriculum council. The first one would be for 9th grade students, and it would be called Freshman Academy. That class would be really an introduction to high school life. It would also include reading for information, study skills, and digital and media literacy and responsibility. And then for 12th graders, we developed a course called Adulting 101. And in that class, students would learn things that they'll need for life. So that self-determination, really exploring like who they are and what they value and what they want to do with their life in a very explicit way. And so communication skills, so the ability to communicate with a variety of different people in a variety of different settings, including social media, and personal responsibility. So that can be everything from paying bills to, washing your sheets at college. Like, how do you do that and how often do you do it? Might be something that we need to explicitly teach. So we plan to present those classes to the curriculum council, and just if that council should approve it, they'll come to you. Hopefully, that will happen for the 25-26 school year. If they do get approved, that would give our students who receive special education a very rich transition experience in an inclusive class or two. Thank you.
So I think you can hear from the representatives from our first three subcommittees, the hard work that they have completed toward this goal of developing a program, which is really objective for is program development and implementation. And so the key considerations that we need to think about moving forward are facilities, thinking about a facility that could actually house all of the items that we would need to implement a comprehensive program, things like a classroom that can provide areas for pre-teaching, whether that's pre-teaching toward an internship, a volunteer opportunity, a college course. Having that classroom space will be essential. Having a full operating kitchen, washer and dryer, bathroom, possibly an area for fitness. We also need to think about our location. We have a huge opportunity in town right now with a number of new areas in town being built up with walkable areas and businesses that would be amazing to support this type of work. And so thinking about our location will be really important. Also making sure that it has access to peers. Inclusion opportunities are important to our community, important to our families, and important to our students. We want to make sure that our location fosters that. Access to public transportation or transportation that we're designing in a way that students can learn from will also be key. We'll also have to think about a staffing model. What is the staffing model that is going to be the most effective to address our students' needs? We've seen a number of different staffing models from other counterpart site visits. And so making sure that our staffing model that we propose addresses the students' needs as well. And in addition, we need to look at our local partnerships. So we have started some of that work. We have had a partnership established with the Darien Chamber of Commerce. They are excited about the partnership. We are excited about the partnership. They have access to businesses that span anything you could think of, from a vet's office to retail stores to restaurants to banks, really allowing students to have access to internship and vocational experiences that are of interest to them. And so that will be a really essential component. They have talked to us a little bit about opportunities like hosting an open house for their businesses so that we could teach those businesses about the benefit of having an inclusive space and what we can offer them to train their staff about how to work with our students as well. So we're really excited about that partnership. We're also looking forward to establishing partnerships with local universities. That will be another key component of ensuring that we have that full continuum of inclusion opportunities for our students. So that will be another key piece. And in terms of our next steps, we have completed our process of reviewing student-specific information, which was a long process, but it is now complete and de-identified in such a way that we would now really welcome and look to design parent involvement opportunities. So whether that be focus groups or parents joining our committee, we really want to hear from our parents about what do they see as an essential component of or essential components of transition programming. So that would be part of our next step. We also look to continue to develop partnership sites, whether that's community sites for recreation, for social inclusion opportunities, again, possibly with some colleges or universities in the area. We are finishing up some of our local program sites that haven't been able to be visited for scheduling reasons. So those will be completed so that we have all that information to review. Our curriculum group will be continuing to work with the Curriculum Council, reviewing the National Transition Standards and making sure that the curriculum that we are developing aligns to those standards. And then again, doing that backwards mapping activity of making sure that we go back down to 9 through 12, back down to 6 through 8, and back down to K to 5 to make sure that scope and sequence leads us to having a successful program. And then, of course, a huge component of this will be thinking about the fiscal planning and proposal. So looking at a staffing model to bring to you, identifying what those FTEs will look like, what facilities will look like, what transportation will look like in terms of expenses, and then also considering efficiencies that may exist in other spaces. So efficiencies that may exist in RC24 and our tuition budget, looking at grant funding that's coming out of the state related to transition as well. So our next step will be really in that objective 4 and coming back to you all with a proposal either in the fall or before of what a program could look like. And with that, we open up to questions.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate this work. I'll turn it to the board. I have questions, but I'm happy to go later. Anybody else wants to kick it off? Go ahead, Katie.
Hi, thank you all very much for this presentation and for the work that you put into it. I wanted to start with a few kind of big picture questions just to kind of understand. What specifically was the charge of this committee?
I like those big questions, okay?
Great.
So the big question is really, if you look at the charge, was over the years, we've shared with the board that we've had 1 or 2 students or not enough students to really look at. And by the way, just I know that cohort, the reason we use that cohort is it really is a group of students. But when you think of cohort in an educational setting, you're really looking at the needs, social, emotional, academic needs. We've had opportunities as students have come into between 18 and 22 to look for outside resources because you can't have a program of 1 student or 2 students. But the charge was, as we've seen our opportunity for students, and we've increased our students who have either returned to district or moved to district, and we're looking at K through 12, we finally had the opportunity, and the charge was to start to develop our own program because we have, you saw from 5 to 10 to 15 students who will really need our support and really need us to develop our own program. So the charge was, we now have an opportunity and students who are able to start to have our own community within our school because our students live here. They go to, as I said once before, they go to our pizzerias, they go to our libraries, their siblings are here, and we now have enough students to have a proper program so they can have a cohort of students they can socially engage with, they can work on different opportunities with, and we don't have to look outside of our own program. That said, because it's so individualized, there may still be students who are accessing different opportunities in their own program that will be designed. So for instance, if there's a student that really wants to attend courses in a local college, that will be something that's still accessible. But they'll still have this home base that they'll start within their own community where they live. So that was our charge. We have enough students now to have our own program and not have to rely on neighborhoods or others.
Sure. To that. Thank you. Thank you for that. My expectation was that part of the charge also included those students that might be looking for something, not necessarily outside of the district. Well, I guess I do mean outside of the district, but that there would be a part of this project that was about transition opportunities for students who are ready to move on, that we would be looking at creating a more robust program that would support those opportunities, those students looking for those opportunities. Was I misunderstanding that?
Do you mean college and career placement? Is that what you're referring to?
Post-secondary opportunities specifically suited to students with needs I thought was part of what would be looked at as well.
Clearly.
And not just a program that within our district, I guess.
So the program with our district is, if you think of it as a home base, and then those opportunities that you're describing, Julie, would be part of the program that we would design. So you need the skills to be able to go out and access those opportunities. The idea was the base would probably be, as we said, either beginning in the morning as a team and a cohort of students. It might be where you receive your related services. It might be where you begin to develop the skills you need to be able to access those other opportunities outside of the community. But you would still need to have to develop those skills to be able to access those other opportunities.
So maybe an example could be helpful too, because I think it's really important not to think about a program as a one-size-fits-all model. So, one student might be requiring transition support in terms of transportation safety, health and wellness safety, relationship safety. Academically, they may be ready to take post-secondary courses in a college setting. So that student may have a hybrid program within a program like this. The transitional program is not sort of a one-size-fits-all. Another student may need comprehensive support across all areas of their academics, their vocational skills, their life skills, and their personal skills. And that student may access the program throughout the day. So similar to our other programs like Excel, ALC, core, all of our programs. There are a range of, or a continuum of opportunities to access the program. But the program itself contains the core essential components so that it can have that flexibility to have a student have an individualized program.
Can we pick up on this topic of, and I see you, this topic of placement and how complicated it is to facilitate college and career placement? It requires that the people here in our district know a lot about what's available from the college perspective, but also a lot about for students who may wish to transition directly to employment, how that looks. How are we getting our staff ready for that type of complexity?
Sure. So we have had, and I hope I understand your question correctly, but we have had Kathy Oster, Director of School Counseling, and another school counselor on our committee doing that work as well. So a lot of research has gone on to think about that post-secondary work of understanding colleges with support services for students who are looking to obtain the skills required to transition to one of those settings. So again, having that self-determination. What is the student looking to accomplish? And that's what the transition program would be helping, would be looking to help them do.
Thank you.
Can I try to add to that also? And I hope, as Scott said, I'm answering correctly. And this goes back, maybe it's helpful to Julie's point. It's probably easier if I just use an example of what that precursor would be. And I'm looking at different disciplines. So we'll just take a hypothetical. Okay, this is not an actual student, but there's a student. So there's a student who really wants to pursue going to college and taking a university class. But the university, I'm giving you a hypothetical, you have to be independent to take that class. They're not, they're not looking for that particular class is not able to support with either paraeducators or other staff. And the student has the skill requisites in terms of the precursors, we can pre-teach, we can do the academic piece, but really doesn't have a lot of the independence to negotiate a college setting to get into the classrooms around the campus to do that. So to Scott's point, we'll do a lot of travel mapping. We'll do a lot of visits to the college to get used to it. We'll do some approximation and some fading of support where we may have to start with someone really helping and assisting that student to get to the class, and maybe over the course of weeks or days or however long it takes to be able to get that independence. So we would kind of fade back support until that child has the requisite and the independence to access that environment. So very often it can be something, and there can be, I keep looking at a psychologist, a speech therapist, teacher, there can be one of those domains that really has to be addressed before the student can access some of the rigor and different opportunities. So that's, I think that might help in terms of understanding what it can do. There might be a child, I can do with speech and language also. I'll do clinical, I'll start with a psychologist where they really need that support because there's an avoidance. They're really not comfortable going into a large setting. They're not comfortable going into a classroom that has a large amount of students, and they're not able to really access the social skill that has to go along with that. So that would be what our pre-teaching is, really approximating that again, having that student work with a school psychologist, or a counselor or someone to really help that student gain the skill to be able to go in and do that independently. Every program we visited, independence is a real significant piece to this. So whether it's independence of your social emotional status, your linguistic status, your academic status, your motor status, whatever that is, and that domain is what our responsibility would be to get students into different rigors and opportunities for learning. I hope that's helpful.
One piece to that. We're already seeing that this is a challenge. So we have students who participate in our Excel program and who require continued support for transition-based activities, vocational-based activities. And when they hit that sort of that year where they would walk across the stage and they're receiving their certificate, they're continuing to be eligible for services. They want to live and be part of their community and be with their families. And designing a vocational experience on an 8-day rotating schedule is impossible. And so and Kat's laughing because she's trying it right now. So again, it's not that the program itself is a one size fits all. It allows itself that flexibility for a student to transition from high school. Well, all of their other peers are transitioning as well. So they walk across the stage and they get to leave and go to a next program. What that looks like for each student could be different. For some students, that might be significant work towards competitive employment. And for some students, that might look like developing the requisite skills to attend a post-secondary supported institution. There could be a range.
So I'm just going to follow up on my own question one more time. How are we, I appreciate the answers. So I hear the answer on how we're getting staff ready for placement in college. I appreciate the flexibility that we're building into the program. How are we training staff to support students who might go to an employment environment, competitive employment? How do our staff get familiar with what's out there and how that's a big lift, and it's a little different than what high schools typically do.
Right. So there are national standards for transition, curriculum standards for transition that we would be implementing and training our staff on. A lot of that really comes from community relationships and assessing what is the need of the space. And, you know, often we think about what is the student's interest first, and then what space in the community has availability for us to have some supportive job coaching, and then thinking about how are we actually going to implement those standards within that environment. So that will require professional development.
Okay, can we put that on our fiscal planning piece?
Yes, yeah, of course.
Thank you.
And if I may just add to the professional development piece, great question. The other piece is what we've already begun, and we have both Kathy Oster, the Director of Counseling, as well as Allison Longfellow is one of the members of our team. The counselors are really investigating, looking at learning about programs, not just in Connecticut and neighboring states, but outside of the local area, and getting from not only familiar, but understanding what the prerequisites are for those programs, how we can prepare our students to get access to those programs. And that's been a partnership with parents also have shared their experience. We've learned from them, as well as what we're asking our counselors to learn.
Thank you. Katie.
Okay, so just piggybacking off that, I'm glad to hear that professional development came up. And while I understand you guys have a lot of work ahead of you, I would just flag that, it would be great to hear also about not just the professional development that's going to the guidance counselors, but also how that is coming back to other staff in terms of transition assessments and transition goal writing. Because I think as we further develop and get more involved in transition programming, we'll learn more about what needs to come before that. So just to follow up on kind of the conversation and the question that we were having, I feel like we might slightly be misunderstanding each other. So I'm just going to try again slightly differently. I think that sometimes when we start talking about cohorts in particular, we can fall into explaining the specific and unique concerns of a high need population. And I understand that this program absolutely is necessary and could be a really wonderful thing for so many of our students. It's actually very exciting. However, it does not address the full scope of students in special education that will be completing their senior year at DHS. And I think that was kind of where some of the question was coming, right? So this program clearly has been identified as maybe benefiting, say, 5 kids in the first year, maybe up to like 15 at one point. So my question is, what about, let's say there's 300 kids graduating, right? We have a 20% identification rate. So we've got 60 students, right? So if we say 10 of them might be eligible for this program, what are we doing in terms of transition planning and preparation for those other 50 kids? Some of them, absolutely, independence is not an issue for them, right? Some of them, might have a lifelong learning disability like dyslexia, and they need to school that can have accommodations. Some other ones, what if they had, let's say, a mental health issue and perhaps were interested in a gap year? How are we kind of crafting a department expertise in order to serve and advise all students?
You're the boss.
I just want to, so Katie, I think the most proper way to answer the question is that and that's where I'll take the word cohort out of that. I think very often the student population that you're describing is something that we work at year by year, IEP meeting by IEP meeting, to make sure we're addressing that as students are progressing among the grades and through the grades. So for students whether they're students who, and we've addressed their dyslexic behaviors, whether we've addressed their social emotional needs, whatever the area of the primary learning difference is, I believe we do that all along. And I believe the participants who support that and design that program, it doesn't happen their senior year. It happens in 6, 7, 8. It should be more explicit. I agree with that. And 9, 10, 11, 12, it becomes explicit magically. I get that. We have to do better at that. That said, it's the school psychologist on that team, it's the speech language pathologist on that team, it's the special education educator on that team, it's the general education educator on that team, it's the administrator who supports that, it's the school counselor. So all the team members of that student are and should be designing what that trajectory is for post-secondary. That would be the most proper way to address it. And we need to do that explicitly. It should not be implicit, it should be explicit.
Okay, so sorry, just to make sure I understood, you're saying that really that needs to be built in all along the way, and that will continue to improve and become more robust in Darien as we gain knowledge and do the professional development, all those things.
For all those stakeholders, those team members.
Yes, okay, thank you.
And just to add to that, Sullivan, I think you're exactly right in what you're talking about. So it's not just the 60 students with IEPs in their senior year who don't know how to do laundry in their freshman year of college, as Allison pointed out. It's probably all 300. So while the charge of this group was to really think about comprehensive transition programming and a comprehensive transition program to address the students who have needs across all of these areas, the work identified gaps going K-12, and that's some of that work you're seeing with, the development of 2 classes. So we already are seeing that there's an offshoot of this work that's going to need to go, backwards, in thinking about how are we aligning a curriculum for all students who have transition goals and objectives and needs, to support their transition, whether that's understanding how to self-advocate for my accommodations in college and practicing that, whether that's understanding my own mental health profile so that I understand in my next setting how I'm going to be able to manage that. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and that's kind of become illuminated through our work together. So there's certainly an offshoot that needs to happen as well, thinking about how are we writing our post-secondary outcome goals, how are we doing our transition evaluations so that they're effective. I think we have a lot of work to do, and we've sort of seen that through this program, or through this committee work.
I appreciate you saying that and look forward to hearing more about areas that you guys continue to identify and develop. So thank you.
Of course.
Dennis, then Julie.
One thing I think I missed on here is the timeline of when to expect the rollout of the program.
Yep.
And do we have a timer? Is that 25, 26?
That's our goal. So we're hoping to come back to you prior to budget season prior to October, with a proposal, with an actual firm proposal.
Okay.
Now we're hoping we will come back to you with a proposal prior to the fall with an actual outline of what once we get that parent input and feedback and complete the process, actually outline for you.
And then can I build on that? Because one of the things that I scratched down is, are we going to have to develop ed specs for a space to determine what that is? And will that have to be before budget season because we'll have to apply it? So I think the timeline needs to be worked out for me of when this needs to roll out, because there has to be work done from us as well as you to make this happen before the budget season.
If I may humbly add to that, we're planning, as Scott said, to come fully prepared with a proposal to ask for a lot. We're not going to be shy about this because we'll including space, staff, timelines, and looking at that. So we know we have to come prepared for that.
Okay.
Yes,
just
exactly what you said, Dennis. We have to do that because there's more to it than just.
I think maybe then what we can do is maybe whenever is appropriate in the next 8 weeks, come back to us just with a quick timeline, please, so that we're aware of what it is.
Yeah, and I think we'll have to work closely with finance and facilities to help us with that process. So maybe April 10th, we'll call Rich.
Okay.
If I can just ask one more question. So just to be clear in my mind, I'm picturing this as like a variation of the Fitch Academy. Is that a fair way to assess this? Or am I off my?
Yeah, that's a fair way, very fair way. Mhm.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to add 2 things. The first is, as we hear more about this program that's being developed, which does sound terribly exciting, and thank you all for being here, by the way. I would love to hear more about how looking at this from a 6 to 12 standpoint is informing the program and how developing the program is informing sixth grade, if you can follow what I'm saying.
Yes.
So I look forward to more discussion on that. And then I would say, Katie put it so much better than I did, but the question about how are we providing services to the rest of our students who are looking for perhaps an opportunity with more support. I would love to have a conversation on that, but it might be separate. I'm not sure where that fits, but I do think that's a conversation that we should be having in the very near future. And I appreciate if it was my mistake that I thought that was part of this conversation, but I think it's something we need to do. So I'd like
I think
to.
they're critically
flag that.
integrated, but we'll
Yes.
probably have to separate them out into some different work groups because this group is really going to focus on the program development 18 to 22. And while they're integrally connected into what happens before then, K-12, that work is a whole other project. So I think we have some ideas and thinking about things that are coming as offshoots of this, but I do think that might be almost like separate committee work for us to align a life skills curriculum, for example, K-12, self-advocacy and self-determination curriculum and best practices, K-12. So we've had a lot of conversation ideas about this, things like having a scope and sequence of teaching students how to participate in their PPT meetings as part of important transition work. It's not necessarily toward developing this program, but it's important transition work on the other side. So we can talk about the best way to make sure that we have two teams kind of working on that.
Thanks very much.
We don't have a master agenda in front of us. Can you two keep us honest on making sure that shows up?
Yes.
Thank you. Robin.
And pardon me for my ignorance on this, but my understanding, so the state did require age 18 to 21 previously, correct? And so it would be just helpful for me to understand, we do have services that were in place to service that age group, but it was just a lower number per year that we had to use. And is the main impetus behind this because it increased to age 22 and now we have a significant population coming up? Or what am I missing that's requiring the facilities and the space that we're talking about now?
So they're two separate things. One, it was increased to 22, and luckily it's not the day before you turn 22 anymore, so that changed also. And there's a longer period of time that we will be educating our students. What happened to the original question, which was once upon a time, we had maybe 1 or 2 students who needed a transition program. Because we've built our programs K through 12, because we've built our programs in our specialized instructional environments in elementary school, middle school, and high school, we now have what I'm referring to as a robust population that we can finally have our own program. But it's not because they turn 22. It goes longer because it's 22, but it's because we have more students with need for a proper transition program.
And did we outsource that in the past to various local programs that specialize in this age group? And did we consider that, or is that just not cost effective?
There may have been 1 student or 2 students that would reach that benchmark and that age that would go into other outside programs. Currently, we have students in outside programs for transition programs. We currently have students between the ages of 18 and 22 who are in out-of-district programs for their transition programs.
If I could jump in, I can anticipate the question being, okay, well, you're going to put a major outlay of capital in terms of space, staff time, et cetera, into a population that's a little bit hard to map. So is it just that this is happenstance and we're going to have 3 years of kids that need this kind of support? Or is there a longer term change that means that this is viable over a long period of time? And I think that's the question.
Yeah, and also, I mean, did you anticipate or did you consider the cost benefit or of outsourcing it to existing programs that might be able to meet differentiated needs based on students' diagnoses versus building it ourselves, which is kind of what we did with Fitch. And that's kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah, I think there's 2 parts to that. One, philosophically, we always believe that a program that is in our community, teaching our students to live and learn in our community, is always going to be a better program. So we would always believe that. We do have students for whom a program like this would have been amazing, but we have not had one. And so we have had to look to other placements and have our students in other communities, tuition students, even in public other public town communities. And so I think there's two pieces. There's one that the cohort has just evolved over time. So as you know, as the board approved additional staffing in our Excel program last year, the cohort has grown for a number of reasons. And now that cohort will be eligible for services longer. So it's both pieces. It's grown and we'll have them until 22. So it necessitated the development of a program.
And just also in terms of the number of students, Robin, to your question also, the number has increased exponentially. When we arrived here 9 years ago, there may have been perhaps, I don't want to give the wrong number, but I'm going to say approximately about 8 students that might have met that need. And now we're well over 20 students, if not more. And many of those are still elementary. So our cohort in elementary school now in our developmental learning centers at Oxbridge, close to probably 16 students.
And
Also, students return to district for high school. So they may have been outplaced or unilaterally placed by parents, and they've come back to our high school program. So many of those students returned.
Okay, and then just getting on, you mentioned grant funding opportunities in the very final slide. Do we have existing grants that would be available to help with the cost of this, or are there additional funds that would be available that we could access?
So the State Department in the past week has opened a grant that we will be applying for transition services specifically. And so that will be, I believe, Rich, that's for this current school year, and hopefully will also exist next year as well.
Thank you.
So a couple of things. Can you talk to whether or not you looked at the, say, New Canaan, Westport, whatever they have? Is there a possibility that, New Canaan has something very different than this, that maybe some of our students would benefit from? And if we built something like this, some of is there the ability to share? And I fully understand that you want to bring them into your own community, but is there the possibility that we build something that might be beneficial to more? Or is it that you really want to focus on, and I see the community benefit for sure, but I'm just curious if there's, something lacking out there in the county that maybe we build and they come.
That's possible. Each program model is pretty different. There's a competing space, for example, on college campuses. So the Westport Public Schools has a relationship with Fairfield University. The Fairfield Public Schools used to have a relationship with Fairfield University. Now they've had to find space at the University of Bridgeport. So it could be that programs have specific focus models that could address certain student needs that maybe ours could address in other ways, and there could be collaborations. We have already had tuition students in other programs in local districts, so that certainly can be part of the conversation, and we work closely with those programs.
Yeah, I was just curious if there's a hole that you see that, maybe we could fill, that we could fill.
I don't know if there's a whole, it depends on the students.
Right.
And the population. I think the advantage also to having the opportunity now to build our own program is to be in our own community.
Yeah.
And especially since downtown is becoming so vibrant with new buildings and new businesses, that our students who live in our community can have job opportunities that they may not have had before.
Understood. My next question is more of a question for us and for Alan. When we're thinking about these financial outlays, just thinking about our current budget process and how challenging that's been this year, I'm projecting forward that this is a big lift, right? I would love to know the prioritization of the rest of whatever is going to come our way, if we can, sooner rather than later. I love knowing that this is coming down the pike, but what else is coming? I just want the idea of prioritization as we go forward with our budget process, I think is going to be important.
Well, this is a significant enough program that it has to be flagged like.
Absolutely. And I appreciate it that we know it's, we're not even done with this year's budget, but we know it's coming next year. Like, I appreciate that. But what else is coming?
So I think we'll have an opportunity also. We'll kick off our strategic planning for the following year in late spring, early summer. And that is a good time to start identifying at a high level other things that are coming. Somebody else.
I have the same thought, Sarah, since New Canaan, Wilton, Weston, Greenwich all do similar programs, it might be nice to get an idea of how they staff it and what their size are, just to get a quick outlay of what to expect in the future.
And we have that information, so we could provide that to you.
That would be great.
That was one of the site visit questions, was what is your current staffing model? where are you located? Is this rented space? Is it district space? So we have all that information of all the local district programs.
You talked about best practices. What are you think, and well, at the beginning, you gave us your philosophy, and maybe those are the same in this case as best practices, or maybe the best practices is more, but can you just sort, maybe in summary, maybe not, what do you think really, I see the program design, but what is best practice for this kind of program? What does that mean?
It's a big question.
You're welcome.
Best practice, I think that a word that we have really been sticking to is self-determination, is ensuring that what a student wants for their life post 22, we can help them accomplish. So if that's going into a supported college setting, if that's having a competitive employment, if that's living independently, if that's living at home with their family, that our program has the flexibility and the continuum of supports to help them get there because they're adults. So that's sort of the best practice model from us.
Thank you.
I would say it's whatever practices work best for students and their particular needs in this particular case.
Oh, sorry. We have Katie and Robin, then Robin.
Thank you. So two things. One, as we're thinking about the timeline and the work that's to come, I would love to see a simultaneous along with the program development. And as we're figuring that out simultaneously, I'd love to see that kind of in-house program or in-house professional development, right? So it will take time to fully develop this program. It will take time to find a facility. And during that time, we have students whose needs we are looking forward to meeting in the future. So I'd like to see us also focus on finding expertise that can help us in the larger spectrum of students who need help with special education transition, and then tying that to, I would ask, kind of what expertise we're looking into, beyond the site visits and beyond the programs, understanding that they're all a little unique to their particular communities, to their cohort needs. What expertise have we engaged in? Who would the point person even be in-house as we talk about developing our current staff that would be guiding and advising families? And by the way, Dr. McCarthy, I really appreciate just your comments about, really looking for student outcomes and centering that around what students want for their own lives. Thank you for that. So just in that mind, right, in that vein, like, how are we looking to more immediately equip our existing staff with the information tools they need to better support families?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so that's a follow-up piece that along with the timeline, there'll be some information about PD, maybe starting this year, going into next year. Thank you for the question. Robin?
I wanted to ask a follow-up question just on, I noticed in your next step slide, you also had consideration of efficiencies noted. What exactly are you thinking about when you mention that?
Sure. So it's efficiencies. The easiest example could be out of district tuition. So we have this cohort of students who we likely believe we would not be able to program effectively for at Darien High School. And so they will require programs. And so as we project out what those students' programs could look like, and we also think about having an in-district program, assessing what that efficiency would look like. There could be efficiencies in other spaces as well.
So you're saying that if we had our own program, potentially that would reduce the number of outplacements? Is that what you were saying? Or
Within that cohort.
Within that cohort?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Just when we conclude, excuse me, I just want to make sure we understand what are just general questions and answers to be to come back, and what is extension of the scope of the charge a wee bit. Not that, I just want to make sure that we're clear about those things.
Yeah, so yes, thank you. In terms of follow-up, we're looking for a timeline in the next 8 weeks. Part of that timeline will include professional development that would be happening in the current fiscal year, because I assume, or one we just budgeted for, if not the current one. Then after that, I think separately, we have an agenda item to talk about some of the broader based items that are identified. In particular, college or post-secondary placement and independence for students who don't fall inside of this cohort. We can, follow your lead as groups. Katie and Julie will make sure that we don't lose the thought, but we'll follow your lead in terms of when it should show up on an agenda as a future talking point. And then we are expecting late summer, fall. This will show up as an actual presentation with the fiscal resources attached. More immediately, when we have the strategic plan discussion, it will show up there. Is that correct? Dennis?
I have two last points. One, on transportation, I'm trying to build in the chair's comments earlier, not trying to identify any students, but would there possibly be wheelchair needs for people that we would need a wheelchair van to help transport these children, and maybe possibly owning a wheelchair van in district would be beneficial?
Yes, it would.
Yes and yes.
Thank you. Secondly, going back to the classes, sorry. Adulting 101, I have two college graduates who said that they were taught enough to get through, but they were amazed at how many of their fellow students have zero idea how to do Adulting 101. So I think that would be a great thing. And I would, just as a plug, to teach you someone how to change a tire and maybe jump a car as well. But my point is, Freshman 101, is high school too late to start that, and should it be done in middle school? Because when you get to high school, you're already behind of how to learn how to do high school when you're in ninth grade. So something to think about, maybe.
And I think to Julie's point of that sixth grade piece too.
Yeah.
I think we're thinking going way back. What is that, a vertical alignment, even before sixth grade?
But I love the ideas.
Robin?
There's just one quick one following up on the transportation question specifically, because I had thought about that as well. And one question I have is, does our current transportation special appropriation proposal have adequate capacity to handle these students that we're projecting if needed in the future? That's just one, if to the extent that we're purchasing vehicles.
I don't know if we can answer depending on the students and where they are. I think the advantage that we're thinking of using the current proposal of transportation in vans is that a lot of the transportation would happen after other students arrive at their school. So if all our students come in just using a Fitch model, if they all arrive at school at the same time, and then some students are going out, they've got to make their own arrangements to call for the Suburban, to go to work at a store in town or at the library or at a new opportunity, a medical office or a physician's veterinarian. We would use them during the day when it's not being used for either ELP or other out-of-district transportation.
Okay, thank you.
We will come back to you with that assessment as well, with the proposal.
Greg, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, just real quick. I think something I don't think I heard you mention it, Jill, in your follow-up items was just an understanding of what other districts are doing, how they're doing it. Kind of, I'd be interested in understanding, like, what's the program look like? What's their process? How many people are in their programs? How's that changed over time? What's the cost of those programs? And for the proposal that we get from this group, how have they factored those different ideas into what they're proposing?
Thank you, Greg, for catching that one. Shirley, did you want to say something?
If you're closing, I just want to say one thing, and thank you for acknowledging our committee members here tonight panel. I do want to say that as part of this extraordinary panel that's been there and volunteered, but just for Taylor and for Christiana, for Megan and for Allison and for Kat and all the other members, people were like lining up to be on this panel, just so you know. These are our colleagues who have done this. We had to actually turn people away. And just to know the commitment we have in terms of supporting all learners here, and just to thank them, and I know you've acknowledged them already, but all of this work and everyone sitting here tonight and the rest of our committee members know how important this work is. So just thank you.
Yes, it is. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
Oh, and
Yeah.
Dr. McCarthy's extraordinary leadership, please, who put this all together. I don't want to forget that. And Dr. McCarthy, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Okay. With that, we'll move on to the update on the strategic plan and board goals. Dr. Adley and Dr. Fedigan.
Dr. Adley left.
We lost it. Give everyone a chance to turn the paper over or the computer.
Thank you. That's exciting. So I'd like to, if I may, just sort of walk through some processes we went through here and just some variations of modifications of how we're presenting it tonight. Look, we're on a wee bit of a journey here. The good news is our strategic plan is guiding the work of the board, guiding the work of the administration, guiding the work of the actual district. We know we have some work to do in terms of maybe how we present it, or including maybe the metrics. I recognize that. The reality is we can't completely change midstream, so to speak, or we're in the last trimester, so to speak. But I think over the summer, end of summer retreat, we can be very specific about some things in terms of whether they're metrics or aspects of variations of modifying the plan or otherwise. I'm very proud of the plan, actually, in the sense of it's alive as well. It's been revised. The reflective nature that the board takes and the participation of it, they're all positive things. So I just want to recognize that because I know that I want you to know that I'm listening to some of the suggestions, ideas, and how we may move forward. So with that, I'll just do a wee sort of.
Alan, will you let me jump in for 1 second?
Of course.
Yes. So given the timing for developing the strategic plan, Alan mentioned spending a little time in the summer talking about measures and how we want to use them, sort of structure the plan. It could be that we need to do it a little sooner, in which case maybe we stand up a small committee to just look at what a strategic plan is and how we want to use it. So think about what you prefer. But I just want to make sure that before we actually put the next strategic plan together, we are in sync about what it looks like, what a measure is, what an action is, so that we don't have to do this midstream. Okay.
So if you went to the website and looked at what we agreed when we set seal for this year, because we revised the plan for this year and we looked at what had to be done this year and the years out. You would see this. This would be like one of the first. This is like a week. This is just pulled right off the website, right? So there you see a strategy and 2 actions, and then some of the measures. Now we could certainly debate the measures. Are they metrics? Or are they not? Right? Some of them are qualitative. Actually, a few of them are metrics in the sense of the way we're reporting them out. We should set seal next year and agree on what that metric is, and then it's a simple thing to measure. Then after that, so for the purpose. In the past, we have sort of responded to things we have done, right? And just listed them all, bulleted them all out, right? So what we tried to do this time was, if you look at 1A, there's 2 actions there. Instead of listing a whole list of things, in your update on the strategic plan, there will be one statement that addresses that first paragraph. There will be a statement that addresses the update on the action for the second paragraph, and right throughout the document. So it's not just a list of things. It's the status of where that action is now, like real time right now. And then for simplicity, I know it's not scientific nature. All we did was on the measures, we said, were they complete? They were denoted by a green bullet. Were they in progress? Have we not started them red? Anything in black with an open circle means that it's in the future year. So I left them just in like that. I know we've got work to do in the metric and we can decide what those specifics are, but that's kind of the way this is framed. So in some ways, knowing what the starting point is on that action would be helpful, but I'm just sure you kind of like, as you read it, it's referencing explicitly those things. Does that make sense? It's not so much like that for the board, though, because the board, we didn't have actions to start with. We had strategies and we had measures, and we had the goal. I put in some actions, but they're more, I'll say they're more listy than this is. So with that, I'll start with the board goals and we'll go from there. Is that okay for clarification? Thank you. I'm just going to speak at a high level about the board goals, if you don't mind. We added in the actions here. The metrics again are continued discussion. So the safety and wellness of all the students and staff, all the things that we have done relatively in relation to mental health and wellness, safety and security, those are things that we have addressed in this particular goal. I think the board is fairly up to date on the status of that. The Board of Education agendas, it's as part of regular agendas that we have had. The annual safety and security update was completed. We've done that on an annual basis. We did that this year. We had updated the emergency response plan. That has been completed. And the budget that supports wellness and safety improvements for students and staff, we're in that process now. We have appropriations for safety in the process. We have wellness through grants. We have the school psychologist that's part of the grant. Whether that all plays out and it's supported and remains to be seen, but we have done those things. So I'm not going to list all these things in the middle. I'll pause there just for any update on the safety and wellness if you want to discuss any of it.
Thank you. Dennis. Oh, Dennis.
So thank you, Alan, for that. I like this traffic lights program. I think it works well for me. But I'm just trying to understand what the symbols mean. So specifically, like the budget that supports wellness and safety you have in progress. Is that because we haven't fully approved the budget or we haven't addressed those points?
It hasn't completed the process, basically.
Okay, just to be clear, so I'm trying to understand what they mean. So, because I feel like we've done our budget, but it hasn't
Correct.
been fully approved. But I just want to make sure to the
That-
public
that's all that
that
means.
we've addressed these points and it's not like this is still in progress, that we're trying to support the wellness and safety
Agreed.
of staff.
No, that's a good clarification, yes.
Thank you.
If there's a healthy pause, I'll just move forward. Okay. Of course, what Mr. Rudel's in charge of is all green, is all they can get, right? So there you go. But the reality as it is, we did the revised calendar. The budget book reflects the 5-year projections. We did that. We did walkthroughs earlier in the process. We did the transitions where we had positions in the grant fund. We changed that. We digitized the process. I did say there in one of the actions that we did do the preliminary initiatives highlighted in November. I would recognize that some things like maybe not as clear in that, right? In terms of, I don't know, maybe the middle school scheduling and so on. I will say though that is a wee bit of a conundrum, right? So just, it's hard to, yes, flag it even earlier, talk about it more explicitly earlier, that's fine. In that case, it's just not quite as simple, but recognize that we can, like even this evening here, bringing this thing forward even earlier. So we'll do that as far as we can. And if we can't, I'll have to explain the reason why.
I think that's appropriate. I think your full board feels that we have a little work to do there and we're all in agreement that we are committed to working on that. Making sure that things are brought forward with the understanding that budgets are meant to be live documents and.
So there was a reason we were modifying the schedule and so on. And at some point, the board will probably put on the agenda again a time to reflect on processes and board process of this budget. We're in the middle of it, so I don't think we should do it now. But anyway, I'll pause there.
I agree. Well, that's something we can talk about. Absolutely. Okay.
The implementation of the strategic plan, the vision of the graduate. We've done a lot of work around the vision of the graduate and I've listed some of the things there. I can share with you, it's alive and well also in the district. I'm excited, actually, you'll see even from one of the media things that we'll get to in a moment or two. I did make you notice I did make a change here in the measure. And, you know, you could say, well, we shouldn't be changing the measure like midway, but I'm just reflecting what is reality at this point. We did not provide the quarterly updates on this. We have fall, winter, and spring updates to the board on with these board goals, but I just wanted to mention that. The budget itself is aligned to the strategic plan. What we do is aligned to the strategic plan. I'll leave it there and open it up.
Dr. Adley?
Yes, Robin.
Just one question on this. The actions in this, and I know this is the winter update and there was a lot of work being done on the vision of the graduate implementation, but I would want to make sure that, you know, a big part of the strategic work of the board is implementing the strategic plan, which also, the number one goal is enhancing teaching and learning.
Yes.
And so I would hope that an action in here specifically would be the board's focus on enhancing teaching and learning. For example, and this might get into the actual strategic plan kind of goals versus board goals, but things like the K-3 literacy waiver or efforts that we can do to improve various programs as we evaluate test scores. And I mean, that kind of gets into some of the mechanics of the strategic plan, but I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the board goals of the importance of the teaching and learning as one of the Board of Ed's primary kind of functions.
So the board early on had that discussion, and in prior years, there were specific curriculum goals that were constructed at a board level. We had that discussion back and forward. This actually encompasses all of those
Okay.
teaching and learning goals that are part of the strategic plan.
Okay. I just raised it because all of the actions in here almost are the incorporation of vision of the
Correct.
graduate. And I just want to make sure that the balance is there. And I don't know how we do that more effectively, but I understand your point.
The update to the strategic plan actually on the teaching and learning.
You're right.
That's
correct. Yeah.
Ultimately, I think probably what we're looking for is some sort of goal, a little bit more like two, where in the first case, we're aligning it to fiscal priorities. In the second case, we're probably just looking for alignment in terms of teaching and learning. And let's spend some time talking about how that looks, because we are trying to be clear about this should be our work, and the black and white should be administrative work. So, but it is an important point and something that we need to keep focus on, that is, excellence in education is
For
all
example,
students is
curriculum
why we're
committee was established
Yes.
because of that. And
That
I
would
don't
be
want to
an
lose
example.
sight of something like that as an
Yes.
example.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Robin.
So the communication between the community, the board, and the district, this is a lot of this is run of the work of the communications committee. We have done 2 quote unquote town hall meetings. One was for Oxridge, and the other one was really more of a budget meeting more than a town hall meeting. We have held legislative breakfast here for area towns and parenting workshops. On the measures, I would just say that it's a wee bit of a work in progress, but one of the things we're trying to do at the start of meetings or regularly during the meeting is sort of recognize student and celebrate student accomplishments. We should also do that for staff, and I'm sure they've done it so much for staff, but something that I should follow through with is just really the students and staff in the spotlight. I think we had a discussion before. It'd be nice at some point to get that on if we want to get it on the agenda, to go forward with that. As we just sort of step in the right directions with us. But anyway, we're still in the middle of that work with the communication. The communication plan actually will be informed by the focus groups that met and the report back that we're going to get at the next meeting. We had a template for the communication plan. It's nearly there in the sense of once all this triangulation of the data comes together.
Okay.
The elementary building projects, I think we have ongoing updates, or about even the trying about HHR. The website page is not our own website page. It's actually linked to the HHR committee. So if you go to the website and sort of select that web page, it just links right to the work of the HHR committee that also puts out publications. So between them and myself occasionally writing and providing updates. The next sort of updates to the community are the phasing meetings with the administration, members of the building committee, and also members of the architects and the construction company.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll go into each of these strategic plan goals, and we'll pause along the way. We tried to do the strategy, the action, and the measures. Again, those actions reflect an update on the actions that we set sail with at the start of the year. So,
Sorry to interrupt.
sorry.
Can I just go back to, so something's bothering me, if that's the right word, of just the measures. So I'm struggling with, as the board, these are our goals. And when I see something that's yellow or in progress, I'm struggling with, how do we know that we're on track, or we're at 10%, or we're at 90% of being done. And I think we need a little more clarification on what we need to do to get a green box, and going back to the second goal, where everything is a green box, does that mean that's no longer a goal because we've accomplished everything, or is it an ongoing goal? So I think we need to clarify how we're going to use this document a little better.
We will.
Yeah, I agree with that. In regards to all the ones that were green, yes, that goal essentially has been completed, we would say. But in saying that, this orange one, how much orange is left versus completion of green? I think as long as we set sail at the start of the year with an understanding of what we want it to look like, feel like, and report back on, I would agree with you, Dennis. Yes.
Okay, because again, I think that part of the in progress, I don't think all these goals have to be completed by the end of the school year, right? They can be ongoing goals, and we get 50% done year 1, 50% year 2, maybe another 30, whatever it may be. It may be an ongoing process, and we may say, we achieved our goal in year 1 of being 30% done is enough. So, but I'm missing that part in this document for me.
It's missing the final clarity around it, but I just want to make sure that we agree on what that looks like. Thank you. So we'll go through the strategic plan. Amy will speak to some of them, Martin will speak to some of them, I will speak to some of them, but we're going to give you the high level overview of the actions that change, and then you can see that on the right hand side.
Thank you, Dr. Adley. Good evening, everyone. So as you know, goal area 1 is enhancing teaching and learning, and this is where I think you will see some crossover with the board goals and in specific the vision of the graduate. Exciting update is that we are really involved with our PDEC. Marge and Barry Palmer and I are co-chairs of that program. And the teaching and learning principles were revised actually in spring of 2022. And that was with the existing PDEC committee then. Now the current PDEC committee is exploring those and using those to provide a framework as we imagine our model for Darien Public Schools in alignment with what the state requires. You heard a lot tonight actually from the presentation from my colleagues in SCSS about curriculum development and professional learning. So the second update in 1A is really around ensuring that our colleagues in SCSS have access to and are a part of the design and implementation of professional learning as right from the onset as it's happening. As a matter of fact, we met today as a planning team or the leadership team, and a member from SCS was at the table with us. So we're excited for that continued partnership. 1B is around revising and creating curricula that's designed to be responsive. And one of the things that we're really focusing on is the concept of universal design for learning. As you know, there are lots of acronyms in education. UBD is understanding by design. That is different. I want to clarify that's how we write curriculum with the end in mind, outcomes in mind. Universal design for learning is really about ensuring accessibility for all our learners. So when we write curriculum, we need to be writing through that framework. Members of our leadership team have participated in professional learning. That's an area for our own growth. And so that we can in turn support our staff in learning more about that important work. As we write curriculum, we'll continue to do so also using the core tenets of that framework. And we'll be able to talk with the board more specifically about that in our curriculum updates, in our general ed curriculum updates as we go forward and revise the curriculum. As you know, I'm very, very excited about our ELP through grade 12 curriculum development and writing cycle and revision cycle. That does help us forecast out what we anticipate, barring any changes in legislation, which we know happen from time to time in our world, in writing curriculum and ensuring that things are published in EduPlanet. A spoiler alert, we do intend to have an initial piece of EduPlanet opened in all departments and for all grade levels, K through 12, just a topical piece of what's covered in each grade level at the elementary level and course and unit at the secondary level by June. So that's an initial step, and certainly I'll be looking forward to in a later update talking with the board about what that is and then what the next step of that work is. In accordance with the Public Act, as you know, we're engaging in a deep study around purposeful play or play-based learning. And so that will require some significant support for our staff. We're going to start with ELP and kindergarten. So goal area 1 is really around having a common understanding of high quality instruction and focusing on that excellence in academics and teaching and learning with our students and staff. 1C is around job embedded professional learning. Most of that aligns to our work with the PDEC. Some things that happen most usually, I would say, in school districts is that PDEC tends to be very responsible for the development of the evaluation plan. As the law intends and as the design of PDEC calls for, PDEC should really be in charge of figuring out what kinds of professional learning is needed locally and informing that work. So when we're talking about a PD catalog, the reason why it's in orange is, yes, we have a PD catalog, for example, but the way it's designed and developed, I think needs to be more inclusive of our staff. We need to be thinking about how our staff can provide the PD and professional learning in-house, for example. And then another big lift here in 1C for job embedded professional learning is the instructional rounds, which have taken place in all schools. Most schools have had more than one, 2, or 3 instructional rounds. And we're talking about how that work will be also visioned for the upcoming school year. So that's the main highlights for teaching and learning.
Any questions on this category? Yes, Robin.
This is kind of getting to one of the points I'd made earlier, and I'm not sure if what I'm about to say really goes in goal area 1 or a little bit later. So the question I have is because one of the things that I think is really important for the board to know and understand on a regular basis is, for instance, evaluating test scores, how our students are doing, the trends in math, English, literacy, et cetera. Because ideally, I would think that some of that deep dive into that data would then give information to like what parts of our curriculum might need to be improved or changed, or if it's effective or not. And that feedback loop, I would think, should be listed as part of either an action or a measure that happens on a repeated basis. And I don't know if that belongs in this section or in the later section where we're talking about the definition of student success, which also should have an academic component to it as well. So I was kind of struggling with that as I was thinking about what might be missing here, but that's something I would want to note.
So just to add on to what Dr. Hadley had said before, we specifically updated the action items that are listed in the plan as it was agreed upon in August. However, couldn't agree with you more. That cycle of plan, do, monitor, adjust happens with curriculum instruction. And that's why every time I come forward with my colleagues to present shifts in the curriculum, we're always talking about curriculum instruction assessment and professional learning for the exact point you're making. All of those things must be connected at all times. And that progress monitoring is happening regularly. It's just not reflected.
Right.
in
So
this
I would want to
section.
just make sure that it's part of the strategic
Yes.
plan
Mhm.
and kind of our metrics as we go forward.
So it is part of the metrics in the annual evaluation of the student performance, right? However, it may well take an explicit place in here somewhere.
Just as a bullet point, just so that we always have that and we can kind of have the green, orange, like just from a monitoring standpoint.
Agreed. And if Amy, then you heard, I see you nodding, but so that when we come forward with our next strat plan, that we've done some explicit thinking about what it would look like in our teaching and learning goal, how we want to represent that. It could be that there's something specific you all have learned this past year that we're targeting. I don't know, but why don't we just, at a minimum, know that something like that needs to show up when we agree to the next.
Right. So it's K-3 literacy waiver and all of the work that
Right.
has gone into that during this winter, I
Right.
would think would show up somewhere here in the actions.
Yes.
Because a lot
True.
of
True.
time and
Even
work
before
with
that.
administration, I think, has gone into that. And that would be something I would hope to see in an update, along with measures of what we might be doing or changing.
True. That makes sense?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Robin, for the point. Anyone else?
Yeah, just to kind of build on that point, because I think it's a good one, and something we discussed in the DEI work that we did is, will we also drill down not just across the grade, but across different groups and specificities of our Asian American women not being supported by this program or not? Is that something that as well will be brought forward to us?
That is something that currently already happens. Mrs. Droller and I actually met today with some representatives from the State Department of Ed and as a part of the technical assistance that they're providing. And we did discuss with them how we're actually doing that. So that is, the other thing that we have to think about though is some groups are so small that the students couldn't possibly be de-identified. So in those cases, we wouldn't be able to provide that, but certainly a major intent of that work is to look at the performance of all learners, everybody growing from wherever they are, and also paying close attention to subgroups. Yeah, you're welcome. Good. Okay, I go on to 2.
Who's 2? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so 2, actually, that was a great segue, Mr. Maroney. Thank you for that. As a part of the DEI review or district study that was done before, actually, that review speaks a lot to the point that you just raised. This update speaks to what was on that the August work that this board did with administration. So I'll just provide some quick highlights. As far as creating a caring school climate that promotes wellness, we're very appreciative and grateful to have leadership in this district and a real public support and board support for social emotional learning and wellness. Dr. Dad is with our administrative team leading work in the area of SEL and school climate. As you know, restorative practices is a mandated legislated shift, and all staff will actually need professional learning in the year ahead. We continue to implement Ruler. PDEC will also continue in their work, our Professional Development Evaluation Committee, to determine how that professional learning should be best designed. You'll notice in that first bullet, MTSS, we talked a little bit about that in our SRBI presentation, and this means multi-tiered systems of support, and that really speaks to the behavioral component of students and their readiness for learning. And so that is something that, as we indicated in that presentation, we're going to continue to expand and focus on. That would be additional data points that we'd be prepared to share with the board. The Wellness Center is well used and appreciated by our students in grades 9 through 12 at DHS. There are some maybe more metrics there with how many sessions were recorded, how many were self-referrals. So that data is collected. We are going to launch the National School Climate Survey. As Dr. Dad has previously indicated, we anticipate that distribution will be either late April or early May. That will certainly provide us with some metrics that could and will inform our future practice and planning. And finally, was engaging stakeholders in the practice of embracing DEI. And as we've previously shared with the board, our administrative leadership team is currently in progress of prioritizing those considerations that were a part of that plan and developing a plan for implementation that will be shared with the board for board review at the end of the school year. Okay. Goal area 3 is developing balanced definition of student success through vision of the graduate. And this is again where we'll clarify what do we mean by success and excellence, and thinking, I believe firmly that it's very important to have a balanced approach in that. Excellence in academics, certainly, but all of these other skills are critically important for all of our students as they enter into their post-secondary world. So as Dr. Adley mentioned, Vision of the Graduate is definitely alive. There's been professional learning, and there will continue to be professional learning on Vision of the Graduate facilitated in all schools. I just recently attended a class at DHS where seniors were engaging in their capstone project where they had written introductions of one another after they had interviewed one another, and they each wrote a commencement address and read their commencement address. Talk about an example of Vision of the Graduate. They talked about what their experience is and what their learning was and how that has impacted them and what they'll take out into the world as they cross that stage and move on. So that was very moving. We need to be more public about sharing those things with you, I'm sure. A vertical Vision of the Graduate team has been assembled. We have members from elementary, middle, and high, and members from our colleagues in SCSS. And so that work that's the best way to do that work, actually. Vision of the Graduate has to begin with our youngest learners at middle. Developing systems to measure, inform, and enhance. This is something that I know we've spoken a lot with you, all of our board members about. As we are writing and revising curriculum and it's being entered into EduPlanet. And as a reminder, EduPlanet is not the curriculum. It's a software warehouse. It's a platform. We are tagging to Vision of the Graduate very intentionally there. And we'll be continuing to do crosswalks with where are opportunities in the existing curriculum for students to develop those skills. It's kind of like play-based learning, right? You don't have play separate and teach the standards later. It's integrated. So those competencies of Vision of the Graduate, we need to be very explicit with where are the opportunities for our students to practice and demonstrate mastery of those skills. Eventually also, we're talking about how those experiences will be collected in a portfolio. It would be my hope and focused work to ensure that eventually that is an ELP through grade 12 effort. And finally, auditing and adjusting the district curriculum for school programming, thinking about focus on service and citizenship and post-secondary opportunities. I have been scribbling all over the strategic plan tonight. You probably saw as my colleagues in SCSS were presenting, thinking about, well, what does this mean for goal area 1? What does this mean for enhancing teaching and learning? What does this mean for curriculum development? What does this mean for professional learning? So those are just some of the updates there at a very high level. Happy to, as you know, talk on and on about teaching and learning Vision of the Graduate, but I'll keep it there.
Any questions on this call? Okay.
I would just highlight that the DHS and the middle school clubs and student councils are extremely important for our students, as evidenced by the data here and how you want to improve citizenship and volunteerism and all of that programming. So
good point.
Thank you. That's an important point.
Okay, and so I believe Ms. Sion will take over with goal area 4.
I am expanding the professional capacity of staff. So I'm not going to reiterate all the good work that the PDEC committee is doing. And that's overarching in this goal is a reconstituted professional development evaluation committee and meaningful teacher input on their own professional development. In addition to that, Dr. Dad is working with our mental health professionals for some evidence-based mental health interventions. Teachers are leading their own professional development. We have committees that are incredibly inclusive now, so they're working on all of the initiatives that Amy has just discussed. We have reached out to UConn about perhaps partnering with them on a leadership academy for aspiring administrators. We've also been looking at programs that other districts do in-house. So we're working on that. The DAA has implemented a mentorship program for our new administrators, and we're still exploring the possibility of doing that with the DEA. That is goal 4A. Goal 4B, ensure a professional learning system that promotes continuous growth and support. Again, it's PDEC, but we have done calibration training for our administrators this year that was very valuable, and it was actually great to see how really well we are calibrated. In addition, we have been encouraging, and Shirley has been supporting, including more of our special education and related service providers in our general education professional development. Goal 4C, attract and retain diverse educators. I continue to go to all of the professional learning that the state offers. They're offering another webinar at the end of March, as well as minority recruitment fairs. We'll be presenting the Increasing Educator Diversity Plan to you at the beginning of April. And despite a lack of support from the state, which I will discuss with you in April, we will have a plan to submit to the state. And 4D, redesigning our onboarding program. We had a really great new teacher orientation this year. We had multiple administrators taking part. We used feedback from the teachers from last year, and the reviews were amazing. And we are still tweaking the onboarding for administrators. The document that I had discussed with you, it was very Oxford specific, but we are expanding it so that it will be meaningful for our new administrators, K through 12, PK through 12, but Laura's not going anywhere. So. Okay, and that's goal 4.
I have 2 questions for you, Marge. And on 4D, thank you for the onboarding plan. I'm excited that that's up and running. I see we have exit interviews mentioned throughout, but do we have a formal plan for harvesting when people leave so that we,
So the
particularly
state now
administrators?
requires a written exit survey, which I've developed and it was supposed to be implemented January 1st, 2024. And so I
Right.
sent it. It's not usually, as you know, the best way to get information. The two people who left haven't returned it yet.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the exit interview data that I have shared with you so far hasn't changed. And so the reason my little dots are still orange is we have the information, but the retention rates have
Right.
not significantly improved. So we're hoping that we'll see something different this year.
Okay. Thank you. I was referring more to when someone leaves, we're making sure the files are transferred and the
Yes.
sort of a more formal process for.
Yeah, so we've always had gathering their information back, but now in the onboarding plan, it gives people automatic access to the files that they need from the person previously in the position.
Okay, so thank you. Okay. The minority teacher recruitment plan, how are we defining minority? Is that the broadest possible way or is that?
Well, it's
does it have
called
a specific-
educator diversity now.
Yeah.
So it would be the broadest possible way, even though, again, some of the technical assistance from the state has been focused on things that I'm not sure that we'll put in our plan for legal reasons, to be perfectly honest. So we'll
Okay.
see what happens.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm specifically thinking of, earlier we talked about a cohort of kids who are looking for meaningful employment and wanting to make sure that employment for people with disabilities is also represented in
Absolutely.
our thinking. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Dr. Adley, are you going to speak about goal 5?
Yes, so this talked about specifically at the start of the year, if you look back to it, the focus groups, develop communications plan, website, the design and media package. So we've talked a wee bit about that's all in the works. We're doing that now. We're learning things from that. That'd be the next communication plan or communications committee. And the end result of that will be a communications plan. I mean, that's the end result for the year that we want to put together. The website has been identified. There's going to be more work to be done in that. There's been improvements that have been made, but there's still work to be completed in that area. I will say that one of the things one of the pleasures I've had recently was just this last one, the media package. A senior, Annika Mengel, you guys know Annika, right? Just like you guys, she's brilliant. But throughout the year, she's been working on a media package, which would include a district logo and a wee bit more. I won't spoil the surprise type thing, but she actually presented most recently this week to district administration and all the principals, and it's just amazing what she's done. I look forward to actually bringing that. You talk about a capstone project. I look forward to her bringing that to the board when it's actually finalized based on. It's really conceptually it's done. Tweaks. So I'll be not glad to get rid of this Darien Town one, but I'd be glad to replace it with a district logo type thing. So, but anyway, I'll look forward to that. The other one was sort of aligning the documents, which was talking about report cards. So that work has been ongoing, and I'm looking forward to those recommendations coming forward. We had policies that we had to adapt, but those are being addressed through the audit. And then specifically Aspen, we didn't accomplish that. Like if I had to go back a year, we had to put a red dot on that because we didn't complete that last year. So that's been identified in the communications plan. It has to be addressed moving forward. A committee will be put together to actually address this. So, yes.
Just one question on the progress reports and grade reporting. What is the timing of when we might get an update on that, on whatever they are revising?
Amy, do you know where Julie is on that? I can't give the timeline on that right now, but.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
We are focusing more in my time here on just the curriculum. We have not developed a true timeline yet for that work.
yeah.
K-5, but we will bring that forward to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Oler is working with a committee of teachers on the actual progress reports and the revision of them. It has to be done for this year, so
Okay.
it'll be done by the end of the year, basically.
Oh, okay, thank you.
6 is safety and security and access to learning. I'm not going to read through all this. We've done a lot in the area of safety and security. And you can see that I said in here that the 10-year master plan will be started in FY26 if moving forward we actually fund that plan, which I would suggest in FY26 we do fund it, but that'll be a discussion for the board as we move forward. A lot of these issues you've heard from PERMA reports. We have been implementing safety upgrades. You've heard what those are. Those will be reported in the annual update and in executive sessions. Most of these should be recognizable to you. I won't dwell too much on them. The energy conservation, we had the solar, but we're going to have to continue to look and see if there's any other options for us. That's in the year out. For now, I'll move forward.
Just Dr. Adley, if I can just make a quick clarification, the revised and aligned progress reports and grade reporting practices is actually still a 3-year goal with completion for 25-26.
Well, we need to get the update of where we are just for this year. So in the technology, our technology coordinator has implemented Learn platform, which allows us to gather information on which software packages we're using, how often they're being used. It's available for staff to look for new software, so it's controlled, given feedback on, monitored. That's essentially where we are with that. The library media curriculum really has to be fundamentally addressed. That's one of the areas that we need a fundamental work on. So that yellow dot would be on the lower side, Dennis. We have a lot of work still left to do in that particular area.
We did a lot of work on that not that long ago.
We did some, but
Some,
I would say we have a lot to do.
but it's not complete. And I'd want to take a look at it again through the lens of technology with all of the discussions we're having. And as well, thinking about universal design for learning. So we'll need to be shifted a bit.
Okay.
New maker spaces with the libraries, how they're shifting.
Is that LMS? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's library management system?
Media.
Library media. Oh, thank you.
So the rest of these here talk about evaluating the use of screen time devices. Tim McGuire is working on it with staff, administration. We're going to bring back actually recommendations to the board.
Great.
So the state is looking at giving out, actually Senate Bill 14 talked about the state having to do guidelines for next year, but we're like just ignore that and just move forward with what our recommendations might be and bring them back to the board for consideration. So that includes cell phone and computer use. So
That's on the agenda for May 28th,
that is correct.
correct?
That's the update in technology, the next update, and that's where we said we would do it. Yes, that's correct.
One thing I would mention, and again, just in terms of strategic plan measures, the cell phone usage, if we do end up adopting a policy that would, for instance, restrict that at different age groups, given the research on medical and wellness, that could also achieve part of our goals of achieving wellness, student wellness, to the extent that we are implementing a policy that could have beneficial medical and mental health aspects.
Yeah, and the Director of Mental Health is very much involved in having a voice in that.
I just thought that it could actually be dual measures as something that we're doing if you're looking at metrics or actions and the impact of it.
The next page really talks about a program of professional development for the staff in the technology department for the most part. And you can see for the most part that we've been using software to do that with the staff, and that has been conducted and is underway. And actually, we're in a good spot with that. And that's a quick overview. I appreciate that. I don't know if there's ever a good time to talk about the update on this because it's reflective. It needs quality time. Sometimes it's late and stuff, but I do appreciate the board. Actually, I'm not too familiar other than an annual update that other boards do annually, or sorry, on a more regular basis. Try to have a reflective discourse about that. So thank you for your time and your input into it.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move on to discussion and possible action on proposed revisions to board policies. I'm not going to read them all. March.
So I don't know, do we want to do highlights or just ask if there are individual questions on 9110, for example, role of board members?
You might want to go through one by one.
I think we want to go through one by one and just talk through what kind of highlight the changes that are.
So most of the changes that you'll see are, so our policies reflect Shipman and Goodwin's model policies. We do have some things that are unique to our district, and so we've retained those. Some of the questions on role of board and board members, you can see that someone asked about whether the word revise with the budget. It was okay to delete that. Council said yes, since once the budget is finally adopted, we don't revise it. And if we do make budget transfers, there's another policy that governs that. We did add some language in paragraph 2G about the buildings facility. So it says as applicable, because we wanted to make sure that if the law allowed for us to do different things with the building committees, then we would do that. And the other question was 2J. So even though we've established a district curriculum committee and a board committee, 2J is statutory language. So the advice from council was put the statutory language in, and then you can implement it whatever way you want.
Okay, any questions?
All good. All right.
So policy 9140, conflict of interest, we deleted paragraph 1 because it's much more restrictive than what Shipman and Goodwin has seen in other districts. So if board members have a financial interest in an item coming before the board, they announce that and recuse themselves from the vote. Someone asked whether you needed to say employed for compensation, since employment signals compensation, but it's a good signal to people that members of the board can volunteer and without a problem, that they don't need to resign if they're volunteering. We did, after feedback from the policy committee, decide to delete paragraph 5, which prohibits any relative of any board member or the superintendent from being employed by the board, and figured that both the board and the superintendent would use common sense when hiring.
We'd hope. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, does anybody want to talk about that one? That is a change. Yeah.
It is a change. The feeling was we wanted to provide ourselves maximum flexibility.
Right.
But recognize that, it could or would be handled on a case by case basis. Some of the examples we talked about, for example, if you're looking to hire someone in a area that's very difficult, an elementary Spanish teacher, for example, that's an area that's been very difficult to find personnel, and we would not want to have a policy that precluded us from being able to hire a wonderful candidate because they happened to be related to a member of the board or the superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, if there was a relationship there, that would happen.
Okay, policy 9160, filling vacancies on the board. There were some technical questions that the policy committee had. Those are covered in the memo. The most important change, and the one that the board needs to talk about tonight, is what happens if there is an unaffiliated board member. So if you're a Republican member of the Board of Education and you resign, you fill the vacancy with a Republican. The board chair may consult with the Republican Town Committee, although it's not binding. Our current policy doesn't cover the event of an unaffiliated member resigning. So Jessica Richmond Smith of Shipman and Goodman gave us two alternatives. One is that if an unaffiliated resigns, you fill it with the unaffiliated. The other one is if an unaffiliated resigns, you can fill it with anything as long as it doesn't violate the requirement that the board be partisan, which means there needs to be a certain number from the majority minority. Her recommendation is the first option because the second one, I think, could get pretty messy.
So can you read through how the first version would read?
Yes.
Please.
Right. If the individual resigning is not affiliated with any political party, the Board of Education shall fill such vacancy with an individual who is not affiliated with any political party. And that's how it would read. And then we would continue with the chairperson may consult because nothing prohibits the chairperson from consulting with the town committees, but the person must be unaffiliated.
Okay, I hate to make this complicated, but if you had someone sitting as a member of a political party who flipped to unaffiliated, they were elected in one capacity.
So this one says if they're unaffiliated and they resign, they're unaffiliated. But we could go back and ask.
Would ask that question, because I think it.
Well, can I ask,
do
how do you want me to ask the question? Like, what would you like the outcome? Because
What-
I can ask it again, you know.
I think what is the intent? The intent has to do with minority representation, one, and has to do with what voters elected versus what the person personally selects.
So we
is my
did, we had some discussion about that.
Did you?
Sorry
I
to
just
jump
don't
in.
recall.
We did have some discussion about that. And I think that Jessica's advice to us or direction to us was that this is drafted assumes that that individual was elected as an unaffiliated.
Right.
And if they were not elected as an unaffiliated, but in fact switched while in office, that we would likely, I think, need to replace them with a member of the party.
Right.
As they've been elected.
I think we need.
So I think we should confirm that.
Yeah.
We need to work on this further anyway, but we needed direction from the board is why this is here this evening. So we can work through that. But I'm quite certain that was the direction from my notes.
Just one, I know in the policy committee meeting, it was discussed that you could just leave it as the prior version, which is more vague, or well, it says, you fill it with the political party as the member who had filled that position. Given that have we had independents on the board?
Well, independent is different than unaffiliated.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So if
Then
you're
unaffiliated.
unaffiliated, we have not, to my knowledge, had an unaffiliated, but it is the unaffiliated voting, the unaffiliated population is the largest population in Darien. So chances are,
Someone might want to run.
that someone might want to run, and they
So
would.
is that the thinking of why we want to include this additional language?
That is the thinking. And
Okay.
Jessica Richmond Smith definitely said that she would encourage us to include language that addresses the case of having an unaffiliated on the board that needs to be replaced. But to your point, it's a fair one. And Dave couldn't be here this evening, but for example, he was suggesting that he feels like the language in the original draft of the policy would cover this because it says that you're going to replace the person with a member of the party of the person who's leaving.
Or if any, or if.
And if they're
applicable.
not a member of a
That's-
party, then you'd replace them with someone who's not a
And then just
member of
leave
a
it
party.
simple.
And that's what we talked about. We talked about adding comma, if any,
Yeah,
at
if
the end
any
of
or
that
if
sentence.
applicable, and then still have the last part where the chair can consult with town committees. And because I think his view was that gives you the most leeway and flexibility because times change and, what was appropriate 10 years ago might be different now. And I understand that kind of rationale just from a legal perspective. I don't know. That's why I was kind of going both ways when I was listening to what was discussed.
So I do want to confirm, because obviously your notes and my notes from the meeting differ on one thing, but my notes were that Jessica was saying that the current policy, she didn't feel covered in unaffiliated situation.
okay. Right.
So she was recommending, even though it is more specific and would hamstring you to a person.
that
Yes, no, I agree with you. I thought Jessica told us
Okay.
we should address a
realize
use situation. And Dave's point, was that he felt that it could be interpreted that that's covered as it's written. I think
Yes.
hopefully I'm representing his point of
Okay.
view correctly.
I would specifically wondered if we needed to go on and stipulate, provided that any such consultation shall not be binding to the Board of Education. I don't know if I think that that's necessary. I think that statement stands may consult.
So I can ask her, but she did add that. She added
She
that
added that.
language, yeah.
So.
I think that's important just to clarify
uh,
different.
To
Yeah.
clarify.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so what direction are we giving to March? Do you have what you need, March?
I'm going to check and see what happens if someone is elected as a member of a Republican or Democrat and then flips to unaffiliated, and just to clarify whether the language not binding on the board.
And we have one other topic to cover, which is how prescriptive we believe we should
That's
get
right.
as far as the steps that need to be taken in the event that there's a vacancy that needs to be filled. How detailed do we want our policy as far as delineating the step-by-step process of what happens in that situation? In that we had some debate, discussion in committee about what is the right amount of detail. My personal opinion, I don't want to get overly prescriptive in policy. I don't like too much detail or process defined in policy unless we absolutely need it. I do understand that there are some historical occasions where we've had different experiences with filling vacancies on the board. I'm not 100% certain that the issues, if we can call them issues, that arose out of those circumstances were specific to the policy or more about people not necessarily understanding how we were going about our business. So I don't know if I don't want to write an overly prescriptive policy to solve a problem that wasn't really our problem or a policy problem, but more a perception problem or an understanding problem from other members of our community.
If it is the will of the board to leave the policy at a higher level, which I certainly understand, then my question for Jessica would be how boards typically do capture, because you don't necessarily want to invent a process in the moment when it occurs. So, and I know there's a brief from Pullman and Comey that talks about filling vacancies, and they do specifically mention having a process in place. So if policy is not the correct location, where and how do boards typically capture that sort of information so that they're ready to go when it happens, not as it happens?
Right. I think the one thing we discussed, right, was that she felt that it couldn't be an administrative regulation.
That's right. That's right.
So I can ask her the alternative. But again, I think if you wanted to have one, you would need to give her input, because I think that her feeling was that boards, for the most part, it's not in a policy, so Shipman and Goodwin hasn't necessarily opined on the process they use.
Yes, which I
But
understand.
I'll ask. I can ask.
And that, maybe she's seen that Pullman and Comey brief.
Yeah, I
comment.
sent that to her.
Yeah, thank you. I do think it makes sense for us to already be organized around what we want to have happen so that we're not guessing. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but sometimes it does.
Okay. So we good? We know what we're doing on 9160?
Right.
And that was going back to I mean, this is a first read anyway.
These are first read, and that needs to come back because we needed direction from you all. And I think
this one needs to go back to the policy committee. There's no
Yes.
sense in bringing
Policy.
bringing it back.
Okay.
correct. Okay, so that brings us to.
Okay, so removal of board officers, frankly, the policy, the language was just tightened up to make sure that board officers have notice about the procedures and processes in case the board officer was going to be removed. There was a question about other disciplinary action, and as Ms. McCann and Jessica Richmond Smith said, it's unlikely and unwise to censure a board member, but occasionally conduct is so egregious that we do it. But other disciplinary action could mean things like stripping a member of the committee assignments or taking their, I'm not sure, a letter of disapproval. So she's counseling to leave other disciplinary action in the policy to give the board maximum flexibility.
And the committee was generally on board
Generally,
with where
yeah.
this policy got.
Okay.
So policy 9180, conduct of board members. We didn't have a policy to cover this. This is Shipman and Goodwin's model policy. There were some members of the policy committee who were not in favor of this policy because they felt that it might give board members an opportunity to attack each other using the policy. Jessica thought for the reasons listed in the memo, it establishes expectations for the conduct of board members. Again, it gives notice for due process that this is an important policy. She says that when she does new board member training in some other districts, she uses this as the standard, but I don't believe that this was a unanimous recommendation.
This was not a unanimous recommendation. Not every member of the committee was on board with this, concerns that it's too prescriptive and that it could potentially be abused or invite people to use it improperly. I think one other point that we did talk about to the contrary was the idea that this is something that's nice to have in place before the time you need it.
Right.
Because should you find yourself in such a situation, it's a really hard time to figure out how to address it. So add that.
So I think the question for tonight is whether or not we want to keep it in the board packet or send it back to policy.
Yes, thank you. That's well said.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments or any feelings? Yeah.
Just one question, and maybe this applies more to newer board members. The number one, adhere to all board policies, rules, and regulations. The number of policies, at least in my limited few months of being on here, I'm beginning to realize is incredibly extensive. So how would you approach a situation where someone inadvertently doesn't even realize that there is a policy about some thing that they violate? And how would you handle that? Because to me, that would be an inadvertent mistake. And the training that you give to new board members is not so extensive that you're going to be reading that manual or whatever.
I think the policies are really more intended to govern and shape than they are to be punitive in any way. And that's
But
kind
that's
of-
not really noted here.
Yeah, so
Anywhere.
it's
So-
not, and in fact, the censure exists here, and at the same time, we actually no one recommends that you ever use it unless, there'd have to be something truly egregious. And not just one person feels it's egregious, but
Right.
so the
I'm
example.
not saying that we would need to do anything, but I just wanted to raise a point that kind
Yeah.
of struck me when I read it.
Yes, I think it raises an important point, which is that board members really do have to be familiar with policies in a way that is not apparent
Right.
when you first get on the board. And so that might be something to note, as we think and talk about onboarding, that board members really need to spend a couple days with the manual. But also, we also have to understand, it just takes time to understand how to work with policies. And that's, it's a fair point. But go ahead, March.
So not to be a buzzkill, but all of our new employees sign a document that says they have read all of our policies. And that is, in case they violate them, that's the due process notice. And I'm not saying that it's the same thing, but every employee signs that they're familiar.
They're familiar. Well, I think maybe a reasonable question for Jessica would be, what do other boards do over and above basic? There it is on the website, are there other mechanisms? I'm not saying that we need one,
To
but I'd be
onboard,
curious
do you
to
mean?
know. No, I more mean, do other boards have anything that board members sign? Do they? Are there any other mechanisms that other boards use.
We were sworn in, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I understand that to mean that we will then follow
This.
these. Again, to the best of our ability as
Right.
humans and volunteers who are getting up to speed as quickly as possible.
Right.
To your point, you kind of learn a lot of this as you go, but you also learn pretty quickly what things to check on. Oh, I bet there's a policy on that. I should go make sure that I'm up to,
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a one and done.
No.
No, there's nobody doing much different, and the thing that you're doing very well is going through this audit. That's the most helpful thing. And it just takes time to become accustomed to the policies.
Okay. So we're keeping this one, correct?
Keep it in the batch, I think. Great.
Policy 9210 officers. Most of that is just to get us up to date with Shipman and Goodwin's model policy, but our procedure for electing officers is different from what Jessica sees in some other districts. In the fact that we call for nominations all at once. Is that what? So that if you were running for chair and you were unsuccessful, you don't have an opportunity to then say, try for vice chair. And Jessica is more than happy to revise the policy for us.
So this was one where we were looking for direction from the board. Go ahead, Dennis. Yeah. you have anything?
I personally like the idea that you lose chair, you get to, I don't like the way we currently run our elections, put it that way. I think that what I would call a typical way is this position, this position, this position.
Versus a slate.
So
Yes,
nominations vote,
exactly.
nominations vote.
Correct.
So it would be a vote after each, yes.
So you could be nominated for more than one spot by the end of it. Fine by me.
I'm in favor of it.
Okay. So we'll
I think
keep-
that makes sense.
We'll keep this and ask for revised language on that.
We'll send it back to you.
Yeah,
But I don't think it needs to come back to committee, does it?
I think,
Actually, I don't care. What do you?
yeah, I would think we could bring it back next time with revised language
Yeah.
reflecting that.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, okay. It should be pretty simple.
So now we're into the 9200s official duties of the chairperson. So there are things in this policy that are more specific than Shipman and Goodwin's model policy, but Jessica and Ms. Best and I discussed, it's never bad to let people know what the job of the chair is. The only one that we really deleted as being overly granular is provide for the new orientation of new board members. It's just, if you start getting to that level, there are so many things that the board chair does that, why do you pick that one? So the other thing that we are looking into it says the chairperson shall sign and approve the town treasurer orders. So Mr. Rudel can discuss, we don't exactly know. I mean, Ms. Parent dutifully signs them. There are a list of expenditures. We've already made the expenditure. We don't send the signed version to the town, but we're waiting for an answer for the town. So at some point, we might.
I think we do send the signed version to the town and that's what we were.
So
The signed version stays here in central office and they get a copy.
Okay.
They get the copy.
I reached out. Did you also reach out? I reached out to Kate.
We haven't heard back.
You haven't? Okay. All right. I'll just indicate that they can respond to you guys. I'll retract mine.
Okay.
And if it's a practice that we don't need anymore, we can just make a quick change to the policy.
I've always wondered, like, it's already been expended when I sign it, so.
Right. And so on number 9, the board chairperson shall submit to the town at its annual meetings a report of the doings of the board. By statute, that's the job of the secretary. So when we get to the secretary policy, we've now amended it to say through the board chair. It's just the statute and we should track it. So policy 9230, there's actually no requirement to have a vice chair. So Shipman doesn't have a model policy. So ours is fine. Leave the way it is. It's very general. The secretary.
We held that in committee.
Oh, we didn't.
Because we want to work
I
on
couldn't find it in the board
minutes.
packet. That's a very good reason. Okay, so
So-
committees. There's not much except a stylistic change.
There's just one correction on number 2, the last line, where it should say in attendance and listing of topics discussed, because you deleted the committee recommendations. It's just a grammatical change.
Oh, I'm sorry, the and, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. A question came up on 9260 about 1C. All standing and special committee reports affecting board policy shall be submitted in writing. Is it too narrow a focus to use the term policy there? When it could be something that isn't necessarily policy specific? And I believe Jessica's response was small p policy would cover a broad range. We could call it operations. You could maybe worry about it in the other direction then. So I think her reco was small p policy is the better way to keep it. If we're okay with that.
Okay. Policy 9270, consultants to the board. The recommendation is to repeal this. I don't have the number in front of me, but we have a policy under the business. I know it's in the memo.
It's 3125.
3125, which gives absolutely prescriptive situations for how to hire anyone, including consultants. Then the language in that policy tracks federal and state law. And so this, in some instances, she felt conflicts with that policy, and to have two different policies about how to hire a consultant didn't make much sense.
Yeah, just one clarifying question on that. When you say a consultant to the board, is that talking about consultants that the administration might hire? Not, because typically when we work with consultants, it's not actually the board hiring them, right? So is that just covering
Any
it?
consultant where we're spending money in the budget would
Okay.
fall under the other.
Okay, so we're saying the board as the Board of
Yes.
Education, like the Board of Education budget. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Should we
Thank
just
you.
run through real quick which ones are going back to committee and which are staying in the batch? Is it only 9160?
I thought it was just 91.
I think
So
that
it's going
that's-
back to committee. Okay, I just wanted to make sure my notes were right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, gang.
All right, thank you. That will move it to public comment.
Anybody in person like to participate in public comment? If somebody online would like to participate, please use the raised hand icon. We have no raised hands at this time.
We have a motion to adjourn. Julie, seconded by Dennis. That is unanimous.